this. Boom. All right. So Metzela, why don't you give us in 15 minutes or less some inside information? You know, things that, because they're all going in, they're going to sit down, they're going to think it's going to be great. Go ahead, tell us what you should look out for, you know, some of the interesting stuff that you've seen.
All right.
As far as the curriculum is concerned, right?
As far as the curriculum, all right, okay. Good morning, guys. To those who I haven't met before, my name is Matsela. I'm a Fulbright scholar from the Kingdom of Lesotho. If you've watched the movie Black Panther, yes, they actually depict where I'm from to a certain extent. And I've previously worked before for 3 years or so at one of the largest banks in Africa by asset base. So what I'll do today is, I think, for the benefit of you all, I'll relay my story about the program, which may be a bit skewed given the fact that I'm an international student. Therefore, there's a bit of a skew there, but I'll try to relate my experience with everything, and then I'll try to open it up for you guys to ask me questions if you see fit. So what I did when I came to Lehigh, I actually didn't know anybody. So in hindsight, that was a very good opportunity for me because I got to form relationships, which I think I'd just like to start off from that point that with you guys being a cohort, I think you have to realize that you're actually in competition, not necessarily amongst yourself, but with other people outside the program. So just establishing very strong relationships might actually put you in good standing going forward. So what I did was, for the first 2 weeks of the program, I actually sat in every single class. So usually I believe some of you guys are taking 3 classes now, which is probably, I started off with statistical computing, random processes, optimization, I believe as well. I don't know if any of you guys are taking that. I'll try and make this as interactive as possible. So I sat in all of those classes. I also sat in some of the second-year classes as well, just to get a lay of the land in terms of what the program has to offer and which areas of knowledge I might not be able to sit in as in the class basis, but I might just know that these are being offered and maybe I should learn a bit more about this myself. So I don't know how many of you guys are taking statistical computing or random processes? I don't know, by show of hand, anybody?
Ben?
Yeah, so random processes. Yeah, so I was just saying what I did was, it's an elective, so you have random processes and statistical computing. So you're actually supposed to choose one, but I sat through both classes because I just wanted to get an understanding of what is being offered. So random processes is very mathematics heavy, I would say, and really great if you're going towards a quant-based job where you don't have a strong mathematical background initially. I think it will stand you in good, it'll put you in good standing on that front. And then on the statistical computing side, we did a lot of applied work. It is a lot of applied statistics. So I'm not quite sure whether you guys had any information about the courses before, but I would strongly recommend that you at least reach out to me as well after this to get an understanding of whether they're aligned towards what you're trying to achieve. I don't know if there's any questions at this point. You guys feel free to ask me anything. Professor Zoran always says these are never lectures.
I know.
Because if we interact,
yeah, Joan's got a question. Joe's got a question.
So I'm not sure where you did undergrad, but I'm curious what's your opinion on how graduate classes kind of differ from undergraduate classes? What was your experience?
Good question.
All right, so I did my undergrad in what is now being called the University of Witwatersrand, which is in Southern Africa. It's now the top university in Africa as of 2 weeks ago. And what I'd say is the difference between the two is that the one thing I liked about Lehigh, I must say, everything is applied. It's project heavy, so you have, I'll talk about all of the courses pretty much, honestly. There's always a strong project component, which makes it quite useful, right? Because at the end of the day, you're moving on to the workplace and you want to be able to do, not just know. So I'd say that's what's been the one of the greatest, I'd say one of the greatest differences that I've actually come across from my side. Yeah, hope that answers your question.
Yeah.
All right. Anybody else?
I was kind of curious, what was your main motivation for like coming out of your role at the bank and then coming over to participate in the program, and sort of what you see as the benefit moving forward in your career?
All right. I think we're always trying to grow, right? So you'll finish MFE, probably go work for a couple of years and realize that there's always an avenue. There was an opportunity for me to grow. So I think the main reason that brought me here was I come from a heavy quantitative skill set background. Like I said, I have a strong exposure of the African markets. But I thought with the MFE program here at Lehigh, I was going to get a much broadened worldview in terms of what's offered on the American side, as well as on an education basis point. Because, I mean, if I've been educated in one area, from one area, which is in Africa, Southern Africa, for me, it was an opportunity to get a different set of exposure in terms of skill set and learning, and really beneficial on that front. Yeah, so I think that was the key motivation. It was a tough decision though, because I was a permanent employee and a junior manager. So it meant I had to resign and leave the perks of bonuses and all those fun stuff behind. But I think it's a sacrifice that's worth it if the pursuit of knowledge is something that means a lot to you. And it really does for me. That's why I chose the program.
And Masana mentioned something interesting before. He said that he sat in on a couple of other courses, and in fact, I think he wants to sit on a couple of courses by Professor Ank.
Yes.
Ank Quant. I mean, if there's a class that you like to see, that you want to experience a little bit, I don't think it's a big issue for you I could arrange it for you to just sit in, before the next semester, to make sure that, you like it all right. Because it's one thing I want to caution you very strongly, right? For you to be successful, you need to be proactive. In the courses, obviously do a good job, but that's not all about that, right? You need to make sure that you're taking full advantage of everything. If don't just go in, take the class, take the grade, and leave. You're missing out half the fun here. And don't forget, you don't have that much time, right? I mean, this is not a 4-year degree. This is not undergraduate. This is, some of you, I think like a guy like Jordan is staying for 1 year. So he's got to go quickly to the program, but you have to do everything quickly. So keep that in mind. Always ask questions. Do not sit and let it happen to you, because then when you go to work, that's the kind of job you're going to get. So you want to come out, running. Anything else?
Do we have a chance? Hi, this is Iran. Do we have a chance to sit in the class for the virtual sessions as well for this semester?
Sure. Let me know which one you want, and if you have the time. I don't see any issue with this.
Okay.
Because I think it would demystify. Marcella mentioned heavy project. I will tell you my understanding, for example, with Professor Kish. Just want to warn you. He's Professor of the Year last year. What's the word that I should use, Marcella? It's interesting class. It's a very challenging class.
I think it'll be a very unique experience. I think it's very applied. You get to draw from a lot of areas, and Jordan, I know you went to Lehigh undergrad, so I'm not sure what the foundation is like on that front, but I think with the fixed income, it's one of the really core heavy classes where you go through a lot of material, you work through a lot of applied work. I think that's one of the key takeaways of it, because it's really enjoyable. I enjoyed the class. The final was challenging, but I really enjoyed the class. It was, you learned a lot. I came from it feeling like I've taken or learned a lot from it. So.
And don't forget, you're actually learning from the only remaining member of the founding member of this program. So when he teaches, you could feel that there's something personal for him, because he created this program 15 years ago, right? So it's not, I mean, not the other professors are any less, it's just for him, it's a little bit special. So obviously you should take that into consideration when you're in his class. And he's a
Okay.
very nice guy, I have to tell you, right? I mean, you know, he may be a bit tough sometimes in terms of grading and things like that, but at the end of the day, you know, use him as much as you can to ask questions and things like that. Very important.
That's the fixed income course like offered in the spring.
Yes,
Or
it's offered,
is there
it's
no?
offered in the spring. I don't
Okay.
think, yeah, it's a really great course. Hopefully you guys will be able to be on campus by then, because I think, yeah.
Yeah, hopefully.
Yeah.
Then you have Daniel Konu, which is also director. He's on the math department. Very
Yes.
bright guy, always open. In fact, today you will hear from Luis Zuluaga, who is the other director, along with myself, with its 4 directors. He's going to be talking to you about computing, quantum computing, right? So also, you know, he does a lot of research. He just got a grant. And you're going to have him probably, right, Marcella, in one of your optimization class.
Yes, I didn't any for optimization, but I think he's taken. I think I was talking to one of the other incoming guys. I think he's taking optimization this fall, so you guys will probably have him.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just to close off as well, Prof. I mean, from
Yep.
my side, I think just given from what Prof was saying, I think one of the key things that I'll also just give as a takeaway is Lehigh offers a lot, especially for the guys that have not been here at Lehigh before. But I recommend that you just have a clear plan of what it is or where it is you're trying to go. So in that way, I think Prof will be a very useful resource for you in terms of just opening the doors and getting you to the places where you need to get, or getting the pockets of knowledge that you might want to be getting. So from my side, that's it. And feel free to reach out to me even anytime. I think Prof Zoro will share my email, maybe.
Yeah. You could send me.
Yeah, I'll just put it in the chat.
Put it in the chat,
Um,
because we got a few people that I want this class to be prepared before they start as much as possible. Stephen, can't see you there. Stephen is here, was one of the program. Okay, let's switch gear. Let's hear about for about 15 minutes or so, a little bit more maybe, with Ramos. I met Ramos. Actually, he's still an undergraduate, believe it or not. But he's going to join the program in the fall of next year. And I first worked with him when we did the conference, right? And I think the reason I want him to talk is because when he started this thing, I don't think he didn't know where he was going to graduate. He's a computer science guy mostly. And then you got to see what we did, the people we met, the conference, the projects. And he said, hey, you know, this is interesting stuff. I wasn't thinking about that. So I want him to tell us, you know, his discovery as to why he thinks this is an interesting degree from his perspective. And he's not a finance person at all. He was a computer science person. So.
Oh, me?
Yeah.
Oh, no, it's the other way around. I don't know anything about computer science.
Now, you see, you always,
Yeah.
But you were in computer science courses though. Aren't you a
No,
CSE?
no, I was not. I was just
Oh.
pure finance.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Wrong
So
guy. Go ahead.
yeah. So I'm gonna be a senior this year, and then I'll join the MFE program in fall 2021. And so from my perspective, working with Professor Zoro since my junior year, and then meeting a lot of the folks that has graduated and also be involved in 2 of the projects, there's like a couple of things that I want to talk about. So let's go with the project first. Number 1, so Lehigh's MFE program, the way I like it, it's because it's really the program is really real, which just means that you're gonna meet a lot of people. You're gonna work with a lot of different leaders in the industry. It's great for you to make connections, and also it's a great practice for you to actually work on something instead of just sitting in a classroom like the undergrad experience. And I would say one thing for those of you that are looking for projects to do, or expecting a capstone in the future, one really big thing is that we really need to be proactive, which is mean you have to go look for stuff by yourself. You have to talk about yourself. You have to share. You have to work with the team. There are people that, you know, it's kind of like piggyback writing, but that is not the attitude and also not the mentality for you to kind of look into those projects. Because a lot of these, for example, we have a tax-driven investment fund, and we also have a really technical and kind of seem impossible project called a falling knife. Those are the stuff that Professor Zoro or any of the instructors won't give you any instruction like, hey, look into this or go look into that. You gotta really just kind of brainstorm it and then to share your ideas and also talk really frequently. And so that's my perspective side of the project and what's important. And then, so this is something that I wanted to kind of address to the international students specifically and also to everyone else. So being in this environment, there's a lot of challenges for you to kind of look for a job. And then for the international students here, if you try to go, you know, apply for something, the first thing they always ask is that, are you a citizen? Are you looking for a sponsorship? So for the last 2 years, I got my internship pretty early in August or September, but I filled out like 70, 80 different applications for different companies. And so it's quite challenging. Not every company is going to answer you. And the chance of you being an international student or domestic students, it's very less comparing to, you know, other people. And another thing is that you need to build a great connection. I think that's like a very important things. Throughout the years, MFE has different conference, different chances for you to meet industry leaders. And I think it's a great way to kind of present yourself in a great manner and just kind of tell them who you are, leave a good impression, and also shoot a follow-up email after like a conversation with them. And that's how I got 2 of my jobs, you know, throughout my undergrad experience. It's just that kind of went on to the Lehigh network, talked to different people to see what suits you, what is the day, what is the day-to-day like for those people, and just kind of go from there. So be proactive and always look for connections, and networking is very important. And also just say that because like the whole coronavirus and also we're expecting like a financial crisis, I guess, you need to be really proactive too in terms of like looking for internships and jobs. I know people that is top of the class of MFE and they're really involved in the projects, but they start looking for a job in March, April, and they end up going home and got nothing else out of the program. So yeah, be really proactive. I would say do it before the second semester, the spring semester. So yeah, that's basically all my takes on, you know, my experience throughout the MFE, working with the MFE.
I would say, I would add to what Ramos is saying is that you're coming in, and it's not really entirely your fault, but you tend to be very transactional, right? So you're coming in and you're saying, I'm going to join this program, I'm going to do this, and I'm going to get that, right? And that you're getting is you're looking for that grade, and you're looking for that, you're looking for the grade, and then you're looking for the degree and the piece of paper, and you say, okay, once I got that, I got it all figured out. Yeah. Well, it wasn't like that before, and it's definitely not going to be like this going forward, right? This is just, I mean, we took Mitsala and a bunch of the other guys last year in New York, right? We went to the IAQF, what was that called? The IAQF math, what was that called, Marcella? The math,
Yeah, I think there was a math conference.
the math conference. Or math, yeah, it was a math job fair, right? Now, we went there because right now, you know, when you're in your world right now, you're alone. You know, maybe you interact with a few people, and then you interact with the professor, and you go back and you're alone again, working. Well, so you think that everyone is just waiting for you, right? But when you go to that conference, and there were about 600 students, all dressed up with a blue and dark suit, the white shirt, and the kind of the dark tie, right? Going after, I don't know, what was it, like 20, there were like 20 tables of people having jobs. You know, you had some, you have Blackstone Group and all these big names that you keep hearing, right? But the odds are against you. Even if you have a 4.0 GPA, right? There's going to be a bunch of them with 4.0, right? And the competition, and it's not fair because you're sitting there and they basically, what did they ask you, Marcella, when you were there? Like when you interviewed, like with those 5 minutes or 10 minutes interview?
Yeah, I think with some of them, honestly, the questions were very superficial. But like with some of I think there's an alternative data company that interviewed, and they asked a pertinent question. They're like, how do you make money off of alternative data? I mean, you guys, I'll leave that for you guys to figure it out. You may think you sell it as the answer, but it's not. So just try to delve deeper into that. And then I think there was Goldman Sachs as well. Goldman Sachs was more interested in what your experience is, what you could do. But then again, like Professor Zora was saying, there are so many people that the opportunity of really getting a quality interaction is very limited because there's so many people and they have to listen through to all of these people. However, I was able to actually form a connection with one individual that I met in an elevator who's very connected with people from that conference. And I think it goes to what Prof. Zora was saying, that at times you have to take an initiative, talk to people. And yeah, we're still in communication with that person now. But I agree with Prof. Zora. All in all, there's a lot of people out there searching for jobs like you. And I think, you know, you have to form a strong base first as a cohort and then be able to go out there and leverage your relationships.
Correct. So, because you're going to spend a lot of time working and studying, you don't want it all to go to waste. And the reason I'm telling you that is because I've seen it, right? I have seen students, not just foreign students, I mean, international students, just US students, right? They came in, they did great. They went for an interview and they got a job and they start working. And then they realize, you know what? This is not a quant job, right? So they got through the process, you know, and then whatever is left, when they have to take it, right? And then they realize it wasn't a quant job. So they had to, then they quit and they get another job, right? Because it's quite complex because past the studying, you have to have a strategy. For example, right now, who is actually looking for an internship? See? Jordan, thank you. Brian is not here, but he's also looking. So as you could see already, people already you haven't started the school, you haven't started teaching, and some people, you started studying, and some people are already looking. And this is kind of the mindset. No, I didn't say look 10 hours a day, but you need to start thinking about what you want to do and when you're going to do it, because it's key. Because at the end of the day, once you're done, you know, once that job opportunity comes along, you just want to grab it because you have nothing else. And once you're in a job, to move out, it becomes very complicated because you got to quit. And then they're going to say, well, why did you quit? You know, and then they'll look at what kind of job you were offered before. So we're trying to change this a little bit by this year exposing you to as many projects as possible. Now, let me address this capstone business, right? So some of you are going to be in the capstone, some of you are not. It doesn't mean that you should ignore it completely. Don't be transactional, right? What you want to be is you want to be as in many parts as possible, because forget what it is that we're going to do in the project. Think the people you're going to meet while you're in that project, especially the people on the other side. Maybe Metzela, you could spend, I don't know, like 5-10 minutes telling them, for example, about the tell them about Inca Digital.
So the Inca Digital.
Oh no, you know what? Ethereum. How about Ethereum? That's more interesting.
Yeah, Ethereum. Ethereum. So pretty much working with Ethereum Classic Labs. I don't know how many of you guys are exposed to blockchain just as a technology. If you come from a computer science background, you'll probably be exposed to that. So pretty much working with Ethereum Classic Labs with one of the key sponsors being Liz and a gentleman called Zane. We're pretty much exploring smart contracts. We're trying to build a smart contract state analyzer. Stephen will also chime in because he's also on the project as well. So what we've done is we've got a basic level understanding of how the blockchain in its essence works, what technologies, how do you interact with blockchains, how do these smart contracts work, right? Which opens up doors to like decentralized finance and I think what the future of finance might look like going forward. So on a high level, that's pretty much what the project is about. So it's a lot of digging deep into understanding some of these technologies as best as you can. So I think the great thing about it is you can pretty much just tune it into however you want in terms of where you want to take it with.
Yeah.
Maybe you could chime in as well.
Stephen? Can't hear you. Unlock
Yeah,
it.
so, and also you can try to build some model to predict the price, whatever you want. You can do whatever you want in this project because it's an open project and you can try to make your own progress into this project. And currently we are trying to build some model and get some data from that directly from blockchain. And I think it's a very interesting project. And I think you guys can come join this project. I think it's very interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. Just want to let you know that if you're thinking of the capstone, I know a lot of people are asking me, but why do I have to give you one page? The semester hasn't started yet, right? So you gotta first, and that's the other thing you have to stop thinking about, that the semester starts August 20th. So I shut my brain out until that point. Okay, when you're gonna go to work, they're not gonna ask you, okay, you know what? You go home, you don't have to think about work. It's constant. The same way when the project, it may or it may not end actually in September because you might not be finished in December. Like for example, Steve and Matsala, they're working on this project. There's no way you're going to say, okay, we're going to be done by then, okay? Because they were not giving a very specific task. Were given a broad task of basically looking at contracts, right? Blockchain contracts. Is there a way to monitor that? I mean, this is very broad. So first they have to understand the language, then they have to understand the contracts, then they have to talk heavily, and they don't do that on their own. They have to work with each other, and they have to work with Ethereum, ETC Labs, right? So there's a lot of interaction going on with these people, and through that process, they develop relationships, right? See, if at some point I speak to people at ETC and I say, hey, Stephen and Matsela are looking for a job, they're gonna say, okay, well, I got 1,000 other people looking, and I got them, but I already know them. I've worked with them for 6 months. That's a huge advantage that you have. And that's the kind of thing that we're trying to do. Now, of course, it's not for everyone. I'm aware of that. It's not for everyone. Not everyone is going to be comfortable with that. A lot of you just want to get it on and get off and move on, right? I can't make you do anything that you want to do. All I will tell you, and as Ramos mentioned, every year, especially for foreign and international students, and now, unfortunately, even a US student, because of the huge amount of competition and the lack of jobs, you're going to find yourself with nothing, okay? And you don't want that. So the sooner you start, the sooner you get involved. Now, having said that, I will tell you, and I think I want Jordan to speak of that a little bit, is of the fact that you could come up with your own project, right? Jordan, for example, tell us about your idea, which we're able to turn into a project. And then we were able to find a sponsor. You know, what I mean by a sponsor is not somebody from the university, because I want Jordan to interact with somebody on the outside and have somebody coming in and chime in and help out on his project. So John, tell us a little bit what you're working on.
Yeah. So when I first applied to the Masters of Financial Engineering program, I was very focused and very interested in something called quantamental investing. It's essentially taking statistical models and mathematical models and applying them to fundamental factors. So I reached out to Zoro. I wrote about a one-pager about this research project idea I had, where I wanted to construct and optimize their portfolio and generate excess returns based on factor investing, which is taking certain characteristics of stocks and putting them in a diverse portfolio, like liquid stocks or value stocks, growth stocks, momentum, see how they outperform, kind of optimizing it. So I reached out to Professor Zoro with a nice page and kind of like a step-by-step process of how I want to approach it. He was nice enough to send it out to a couple of the faculty members and different advisory council members, basically forwarded my email. We got traction with one industry advisory council members who works in model risk at a bank. So he was very helpful, and he did quantitative exposure when he was younger. So he's been helping out. The project is now being developed a little bit more. We're past a little bit of research and it's starting to get developed, and we have monthly calls. So essentially, we took a research idea that I was just curious about that hasn't developed in the slightest, reached out to Professor Zoro, and now we have monthly phone calls, and it's now developing into a full-on capstone project. Professor Zoro, you're on mute. I think I see you trying.
Right. Keep in mind that once I start sharing the information, hey, Brian, put yourself on there so we could see you. When we started the project, and Brian is also on that project as well. When we started with it, what you have to understand is when the idea came out and I went to the IAC, some of them said, whoa, yeah, but this is, yeah, that's a nice idea, but we don't do it like this anymore. We don't do this, you know, it's not really applied in the real world, right? So then you have to go around, even to create the project, right? To go to other people. What I can bring to the table is and obviously the more projects we do, the more people we can go to. For example, I'm adding a 6th project now because they've seen what we've done on the 5th and the 4th and the 3rd. And it's good for you, like it's the Pygmy, PNGME, which I think would be great for Marcella. They're looking forward for the call on next Friday, right, where they want to hear about, you know, maybe they could use some of you. And it doesn't have to be a capstone. Capstone is probably more of a, well, you have to have one, right? So we're having it, but I believe that you want to get in as many projects as possible. First of all, because it gives us more power and then more contacts. And even if at some point, I don't know, Brian and Jordan, you know, they said, well, you know, I'm looking for a job where I could pick up the phone and call the guy that's working with Marcella, for example, on Inca Digital. And if I tell him, listen to what Brian has to say, he'll do that a lot easier than if he has never heard from me. Right? This is the power of the networking. Because, I mean, and I'll be honest with you, right? I kind of know already your strengths and weaknesses. You're not all equal to me. And that's because, you know, I work on Wall Street for 20 years and I'm running this as if I'm running my department, right? So I have people that are good at certain things, some people that are responsive, some people that are responsive. If there is a great opportunity, I'm not going to send it to everyone. It wouldn't be fair to the guy or the gal that is more qualified. So you know, this is the nature of the game. I'm going to be picky and choosy. I'm going to say, you know what, this is a great opportunity for you. You should look at it. And then if it's good for you, then you get first dib. As opposed to in a classroom environment where everybody gets a grade, right? Maybe you'll get an A's, or probably not with Professor Kish, but, you know, it's kind of, this is a bit different, right? Because some of you already, but not a lot. I would say, like I asked for a show of hand, how many people actually were looking for internships. I think I've got 2 or 3 people. I should have all of you looking for internship because not all of you are going to find one, right? And at some point, what I want to do is I want to make the internship, maybe while you're still in the program, mandatory for graduation. I mean, you're going to have the opportunity to do it. But you're going to have to look for something. Now, having said that, I will tell you that we're going to have a weekly development call. I mean, well, it's going to be a call for now, where we're going to be talking, same type of discussion, what's going on, who's looking, what did you find, who's hiring, and things like that. But there are, if you look at the letter that you got from from Mary, she says in there, for the student development, there are certain requirements. You don't get a grade, but to graduate, you need to do some of the things. And one of them has to do with you need to participate in a competition. You need to go to a conference. We want to make sure that you realize that this is important and you go out and start looking. I mean, I can help as much as I can, but I can't take you to the hand by the hand and grab you and say, okay, here's the job. Okay. For example, Jordan came up with this idea. I helped him out. Now we have something we could work with. Brian has a couple of ideas of his own, which we're working on. So, you know, it's a give and take, but it's not, I just sit there and you tell me what to do and I'll do it. And then I'll be a good little student and I'll be doing great. This was not true then because 80% of the job are not advertised. And I think we're gonna have someone telling us about, but more importantly, especially now, it's gonna be even more difficult, right? So why don't, Brian, tell us about one of the projects you're working on. Give them a feel for what it is, because I want everyone to start contacting you, or at least getting a feel for what they want to do.
Yeah, I'll start talking, start the discussion with Ethereum and what we're doing there. And let's maybe have Matsila and Steven chime in to help me out on that. So in essence, Ethereum Classic Labs has partnered with us to develop sort of an analytics tool for smart contracts out there on the blockchain. Essentially, we ourselves had to kind of develop our own structure to the project and provide direction, but in essence, we're creating a tool that will allow analytics to be done on smart contracts. And kind of, that sounds very vague, and it was, and it still remains, but in essence, the three of us, Matilda, Steven, and I, and Yiran, she's also on it, are kind of developing our own paths. For example, I'm modeling I'm modeling token returns. Steven's also modeling token returns. Matsila has this kind of a factor-based thing that he's investigating. And all these kind of models of tokens are going to then at some point be kind of packaged into either a Python library that we can pip install, and then even further down the road, kind of develop a front end platform to that, where you can just point and click, all right, I want this token, I want this type of information, and it kind of just spits it out. It's kind of a Bloomberg terminal for tokens specifically. So that's kind of where that project is going.
Brian, you had mentioned to me at one point that this was such a great idea that maybe we should protect it, or we should, right? There was this aspect of things, right? That somebody could take this idea and run with it.
Correct. Yeah. So that was a concern of mine kind of at the beginning. Maybe we got a little bit ahead of ourselves. I don't know. No one really knows. But in essence, yeah, the idea is that these types of platforms don't widely exist. More importantly, there isn't open source code that does this kind of work. So if we were to create something that was indeed successful and indeed does model these tokens as well as we thought they will and or still can, I guess, I didn't want someone, or we didn't want someone to just go run with it, set up shop on an island, and just start running an algo trading company off of these models of token prices. So that's kind of where the whole protecting the idea came from. Professor, you're muted.
Another project, and maybe Michael, I know it's kind of new for you, but you may want to take the lead on this one. And who else was in that project? Brian as well. But I wanted to hear about Michael a little bit. The AADC project. Tell a little bit what you've, because you kind of knew as well, but tell them a little bit what you think is going on there in this project.
Okay. Feel free to cut in if I'm off on what I'm
Yeah.
saying. But it's basically an opportunity where we're trying to go into less ideal areas in the Lehigh Valley and buy that land and develop real estate, business real estate, and then contract that out. So we're working on more of the risk side of that.
Correct. And who have you met? So tell them a little bit some of the people.
Yeah. So the main guy we're working with is John. I believe he's within AEDC.
Correct.
And so this is kind of his idea, his project. So he's taken the lead on this. And is he talking to us later today?
Yes, he is talking to us later. And I am trying to, yes, he is.
And then we also have met, the one meeting I was in was with Scott as well. I'm not sure where he comes into play, what his position is.
Scott also developed real estate in the region. And he was quite, some of these guys are coming in and helping out based on what their experience has been. And they, this project with ADC is a little bit different because they're literally trying to build something, and then they're using us as consultants, essentially, to get that done. Ms. Sana, you were there at the beginning, right? I mean, in the original meeting for the ADC.
Oh yes, with Justin and Yanni and Gabriel, and yes, I was.
And that was a while back. That was about a year ago, believe it or not.
Yes, in roundabout. Yeah, this is about the opportunity zones.
Correct.
Oh yes. Yeah, we were there. We initially started the scraping of the data. This was way before the databases were available widely online as well.
Correct.
Yeah.
So some of these projects takes quite a bit of time to develop, but once they do, it becomes quite interesting. Ramos, why don't you talk to us a little bit about the conference? Ramos?
Yeah, I'm here.
Yeah.
So,
How did it go last year? Because we have another one this year.
oh, I wasn't there entirely.
But you set it up with me, right?
I set it up with you, yes.
Without you, there would be a conference.
Yeah. So I would say like the conference, in my first impression is that like a lot of people that's there, it's a really good ratio. You don't get like too many people like the career fair with like floating with like 600, 700 people. And then all the people that came with the conference are like really technical and really high up in their own field and their own industry. And we have a bunch of people that's in like 0.72, and then like the kind of like the director of JP Morgan and companies in that level. And also I would say like the conference itself is also very technical. I remember it was kind of presented with the topic of blockchains and also machine learnings and just kind of like data analysis and really fintech heavy. And that's like my impression. And as an junior in finance, I was really intimidated by like just the topic, and that kind of gives me a drive to join the MFE to kind of learn like what they're talking about. But Professor, you're muted.
What do you think about the interaction, right? Because I know it's a conference, and I hope you all know that the reason people have conferences is not really to listen about the topic.
Right, and then so I think the interaction there was a little bit mixture of I would say a little bit mixture of intense and relaxed. I know it doesn't make sense, but in the conference, you do get an opportunity to kind of just talk to people. And then I see a lot of students that coming in early, like 7:30 in the morning, does get the chance to kind of talk to the industry leaders, to what they're doing, what their name is, and where they're from. And I say it's a really good opportunity. And also, I was sitting through a Zoom call with Professor Zoro and a bunch of faculty members that was setting up the conference for this year. And I think the really main big thing that we kind of talk about is for the students to kind of interact, for the students to interact with the people that are coming in for the conference. And I think that's a really big point of why you should go, why you should participate. And also, surely you got to be prepared to kind of just, what to bring up and what to talk about and how you should act around those people.
Because I felt that at the conference, a lot of students were first they didn't understand. They thought, oh, we're going to be talking about machine learning, right? So they just sat there, they listened to the machine learning, they had a drink, they had a couple of bagels, and then they left. I said, listen, I mean, machine learning has been around since the 60s. So if you want to listen about machine learning, you could read a book, take a class, right? I mean, yes, we're going to be talking about interesting topics, but it's not going to, like, for example, we're going to be talking about quantum computing. What are you going to do with that? Yeah, it's interesting. You need to know, so it frames your mind, it's going to impact optimization. But what you really want to do is you want to get to the guy that's talking about quantum computing and who else is going to be interested in that. And you want to get into that conversation. Now, I have to say that when you were selected for the program, we didn't say, okay, who is going to be best at taking advantage of conferences? Who's going to be best at looking for jobs? No, we said, who's got the grades and talk to me about your background, although I'm changing that a little bit with the video. But you were basically brought in on your ability of your grades ability. So that's like 90% of the weight on you. But unfortunately, and it's not fair to you, as you're going to go through the program, that 90% is going to become 10%, because then your 80% has to be, you need to find something that you want to do and a good job, and you need to develop your network. And students, I'll be honest, most students just don't get it. Because you're used, yes, Ramos?
Yeah, and then also I was just kind of like trying to remember what happened last year. So there was like about 25 people came for the conference, but there's like 70, 80 students in total, and then a bunch of them are not related to MFE, and even some of them didn't show up. So I would say it's a really great opportunity. Instead of you trying to hunt them down on LinkedIn, trying to like send them an email, they probably don't even have the time to respond to you because they're busy with what they're doing. So I think like people that came to the conference, you really get a couple good hours to interact with them. And I think that could, maybe if you're lucky, that could be one of the tickets for your internship or your future employment. So it's a really, really good chance for, 20 something industry leaders just sitting there for you to kind of interact with them. It's a once a year opportunity. I would say that.
Yes. Ms. Sala, what was your experience when you did the conference last year? Because you were there as well.
Yeah, I think I relate pretty much to what Prof. Zoro and Ramos were saying. Some of the students didn't go. I couldn't understand why, because I got to interact with a lot of the industry leaders there. Sometimes just to gain a perspective, to gain an area of knowledge that you were not aware of. I got away with a couple of contacts as well from there. So I think it was pretty much a great opportunity for you to do as you please. You're just given a really great platform to meet a lot of people that you wouldn't otherwise get the opportunity to meet. And it's all up to you to come out and show yourself. And really, it was great. I just don't recall. I remember there was a gentleman from Bloomberg, one from a data analytics company. I don't recall. There's a lot of people that I actually got the opportunity to interact with. So I mean, I would encourage everybody. I don't know how things will look. We're having it online this year, but it's even better. I'd encourage people to actually be there because it makes it a lot easier to to just stand out, talk to somebody so that they can see you and know what you're about.
Who's registered to the conference this year? Who's registered to come to the conference?
How do you register?
Aha. Ramos, you're not on the list, so maybe you didn't, but it's on, I put it on LinkedIn. And I put it, I'll send it to you, but you should all have received. Stephen, did you get an invite for the conference?
Nope. I don't know how to register that. Yeah, I know there is a conference, but I don't know how to register that.
You mean I didn't invite you guys on it? You weren't reached somehow?
Yes.
I thought we were automatically registered somehow.
No, this is not a ride along. Yeah, I wish we could register. Hold on, just give me a second. I am going to
I
send
put the
you.
link in Zoom call. Hopefully it works.
Oh, I found a link. I can send it to the chat right
Okay,
now.
I got it. I'll send it to them as well, and I'll send it just in case it's there's something wrong with your link. But I think that
Right here. It's from Professor Zoro's LinkedIn.
yeah, that's it. Sorry, send it to one person. Now, what we're going to do during the conference is that we will, because there'll be some presentations. But then after, because something that I've realized when we did the first conference, a lot of people wanted to talk with each other, not just listen. And there was a lot of time for networking. In fact, I felt there was not enough. So what we're going to do here virtually is they're going to be 1 or 2 panels. They're going to be talking what they do, whatever. And then I'm going to have breakout sessions, right? Maybe, I think so far we have about 140 people registered. And then, so you'll be able to get in there and, you know, talk to the people within that group. A smaller, maybe smaller group of 5 to 6 people. Now, yeah,
Professor, when is this conference?
September 25th.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, between 1 and 5 o'clock. So there'll be opportunity to, you know, to talk to a few people. Obviously, if there's anyone in particular, and I think some of you have done that, some of you wanted me to reach out to somebody in particular, I could do that. Now, if I've never heard from you, it's hard for me to say, hey, I vouch for this student, besides the fact that he's a student. Because you have to understand from my perspective, right? I'm managing a program. So if somebody says, hey, you know, do you have someone that I could that's good at certain things? I can just say, no, they're all good. I'm going to pick the one that I think makes more sense. Right? The same way if you want to contact someone, if I work with you on projects and I know you and I know you're responsive, and because it's important, right? Because somebody gets you in and you never show up, they're going to say, well, what is this? Then you impact the entire program. So you're kind of ambassadors. So it's a two-way street, not a one-way, not give me, give me, give me, give me. It's, you have to do something back as well. And the way you do it, just the job you're supposed to be doing. You have to show up. For example, I think that for the conference, I would like Brian and Jordan and maybe Randy, if they get somewhere with this multi-factor modeling, to potentially take a 15-minute time period to inform people about what it is and what they're finding out, but more importantly, to get their names out as well. So that's important as well. Do you think you guys could have something by then?
Yeah, I think it's reasonable to have some type of preliminary like research.
Yeah, just so you know, we were talking about surveying. Just get a feel. So I'll try to get you 15 minutes where you get to talk a little bit about what it is, and people hear you, people see you, so that when you get into groups, And don't forget, you know, it's like when you're trying to buy a house, right? You're going to look at lots of houses. You're going to be around or buying a car, whatever, but you only need one car, not five. So the sooner you start looking, the sooner you start developing networking abilities, the sooner people know about you. Maybe they don't care, then you move on to the next person. But by the time you're done after 1 or 2 years, the way, and this is something I'll talk about later on when we do the course, you need to develop your LinkedIn, because that's one way to measure. You need to bring up your LinkedIn profiles to as close as you can to 500. If in your LinkedIn profile, you have less than 100 today, and I'm talking about meaningful contact, not, you know, join my, I'm talking about meaningful. That's going to take you a while. So you need to develop that a lot more. Jack, talk to us a little bit about your perspective here in terms of joining the program and what you're doing.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just trying to learn about what's going on. You know, this is interesting stuff. You know, I'm not really exposed to the blockchain stuff or some other projects that have been mentioned because I'm a finance major on the analytical track. So like Matsala was mentioning earlier, random processes. I've actually already taken that as part of my undergrad. So like I guess on the math side, like I'm kind of there, but like I'm just kind of new to the other stuff that's going on. So that's you know, it's been interesting to learn a little bit about it all. So yeah.
All right, so I'll tell you what, we're waiting for Catherine to talk to us, and we take maybe a 15-minute break so you could do whatever you have to do, and I'll come you at around 10:30. How about that? Don't disconnect, just do whatever you have to do. 10:30.
Development. So that means that I'm here to give guidance and support to mainly engineering students on all things related to career development. So I can help with things like choosing a career path. I usually say major when I'm talking with undergrad students, but your graduate students, you've already made that choice, but definitely in terms of making career decisions can help. Resume and cover letter writing, preparing for interviews, learning how to network, finding internships, finding jobs, job offer and salary negotiation. So really anything related to your career, the Center for Career and Professional Development can help. And so as I mentioned, I'm the engineering career coach. I work mainly with actually undergrad engineers, but I do have a counterpart who works in Lehigh business with grad students. His name is Rich Freed. I have his name on the slide there. And so he will be your main point of contact within the Career Center, but he was not able to make it today. So I'm filling in, and all of the same resources and the same kind of help is available that I'll be telling you about. So at the Career Center, we offer a really wide variety of services, both in person and virtual, or in person, you know, in normal times. Most of it will be virtual now. But I think a good starting point that I wanted to share with you all today are our 3 career platforms that we offer. And together, if you use all 3, you can maximize your career success. So these are 3 online platforms. One is called Handshake, one is called Lehigh Connects, and one is InnerStride. You could see them on the screen there. And so I want to go through and give you a brief demo of each so that you can see what all the features that each has to offer and can get started in using them soon. So I'm going to first pull up Handshake. Are you seeing Handshake on my screen now? Are you seeing a different page than where I was before? Yes? Okay, perfect. So this is Handshake. If you are an undergrad at Lehigh, you were probably familiar with Handshake, and many other schools use it too. So you might have used it before, but at Lehigh we have customized it, and it has a lot of really great tools that make it, from my perspective, kind of like a one-stop shop for all of your basic career needs. So if there's one takeaway I would give you from my time with you this morning, it would be to create an account on Handshake, because all of the foundational areas that you need to cover in terms of your career development can be assessed and covered through this platform. So this is the home page of Handshake. You'll just log in with your Lehigh username and password. And then each of the key tools are located along the top of the screen here. So the first tab is Jobs. And you can see we have this many jobs posted on Handshake right now. So there's a lot. We're adding an average of 150 new job and internship postings per day. So there's a very large number. And so chances are there's going to be something here related to your interests and goals. And all of the employers that post on Handshake said specifically that they're looking to hire Lehigh students. So that gives you a little bit of an advantage if you're applying through Handshake versus some of the other job boards. So this is the first place that I would direct you to look when it comes time to search for internships and jobs and things, which for you all in the business industry, I think the process is right around the corner. It's a good idea to get started and looking here in maybe the next month or so, if you're hoping to land something for next summer. And in addition to all of the postings being specific to Lehigh students, we do have a team at the Career Center that goes through and vets and approves all of the postings. So you know that they're all high quality, professional opportunities that are appropriate for you as Lehigh grad students. So it has that advantage as well. This is a very important aspect of Handshake. And so you can search and filter up here depending on what you're looking for. You can type in different keywords. You can select the type of opportunity that it is you're seeking. There's all of these filters. If you're an international student, it allows you to filter by work authorization status and target those employers that are maybe more open to hiring international students. Among other things, there's all different kinds of criteria here that can help you narrow down and find what it is you're looking for. Also within the Jobs tab, you can save jobs by selecting this little flag here. So if maybe you come across something that's interesting, but you're not ready to apply quite right now, you can save them and it will show up here. It also gives you a history of all of your past applications to keep track of where you're submitting to. And then there's this employer research feature that's really interesting as well. So for any employer that posts on Handshake, you can type in the employer name, and you can click on their profile to read a description of the company to see any current postings that they have out there. And you can also set up a job search alert so that whenever a company of interest posts a new internship or job, you will then get a customized email to let you know about that. Lastly, within the Jobs tab, there's this on-campus interview feature. So in normal non-COVID times, we have a beautiful suite at the Career Center where we would have employers would come to host on-campus interviews. So you as the student would come and meet with the employer on campus in the Career Center space. Now that things are virtual, that's of course not happening, but the Career Center is still partnering with many companies to set up Zoom interviews together. And so you can come in here and see which companies have been partnering with the Career Center to do that. And this is, helpful information, and it will show you mainly companies that are really interested in hiring Lehigh students, again, if they would take the time and are interested in setting up the virtual version of on-campus interviews. So targeting those companies that show up under this tab could be a really strategic move on your part. So that's the jobs tab. Also on Handshake, we have a comprehensive events calendar. So we host many events throughout the academic year, and then some sprinkled throughout the summer too. And these could be things like maybe information sessions put on by different employers, or networking events for people in specific kinds of industries. We'll have a lot of career-related workshops or maybe panel events where we'll invite alums back to speak from their perspective and share their insights. So there's all kinds of really great events happening constantly, and you can find out about all of them here. And you'll see, some of the companies that are hosting events that they want to make available to Lehigh are, really incredible top companies, Amazon, Dow, KPMG, PwC, Google, Citi, etc. So definitely encourage you to look at this events tab, check back regularly to see what's coming up, and to try to attend anything that sounds interesting to you. It's really important in the career search process that you're not only applying online, but that you're also supplementing that with networking, because that's ultimately what's going to get you in the door. With some of these companies that we're seeing here, like PwC, for example, they might receive 50, 100, 200 online applications, and it's very hard to stand out. Even if you're a great candidate, you have a great resume, when you're just, one of that many people. But if you make an effort to make a connection with somebody at the company, to show up at these events, to ask questions, to get to know maybe alums that work at that company, that's what's ultimately going to make you stand out. So attending these types of events is really important. And then also this fall, and actually every semester, every fall and every spring, we do put on a large scale career expo. So this year or this semester, it will be a virtual one that's going to take place September 10th. And we'll have probably between 80 and 100 employers who will be present at that career expo, looking specifically to hire Lehigh students. So it's definitely important. Want all of you guys to come to the career expo. Even if you're not immediately looking for an internship or a job, it's still good exposure. It's a chance to talk with people in the industry, to make contacts, to be proactive, for then when the time comes that you do want to start looking for opportunities. So that's the events tab. That's another really important feature of Handshake. And then I'm gonna jump over here now to this Career Center tab. There's a few tools within here that will be helpful for you guys too. So if I select appointments, that will allow me to schedule a one-on-one career coaching appointment with your career coach, who I mentioned will be Rich Freed. So you just go to schedule an appointment, and you can select a day and time that works for you, and you can set up either a half hour or an hour meeting and talk about really anything you want career related, as well as we do mock interviews to help you prepare for the interview process. And then going back to the Career Center tab, we have a very extensive career resource library in here as well. So within this category, we have resources on literally every possible career topic that you would need. We recently created 2 new ones, one specific to COVID-19 and one about remote internships, going with the trends and what's happening in the job market now. You kind of need to adjust maybe some of your thought processes or the way you approach your career search. There's resources in here to help with that. There's categories on resumes, cover letters, job and internship searches, LinkedIn, interviewing, offer and salary negotiations, all these other kinds of categories. So this is the place to come when you're looking to get started on any of these career areas. So let's take the interviewing category as an example. If I click on that, you'll see there is an interview guide, which gives you a very in-depth written overview of interviewing. And then there's a video as well, created by yours truly, to walk you through the key interview questions, the most commonly asked questions, how to prepare, how to follow up. And then there's all other kinds of links and tools. We actually have this new tool called The Big Interview, which might be interesting to some of you, that allows you to record yourself answering the most commonly asked interview questions. And there's a new AI feature on that too that will assess your like facial expressions and your body language and give you ratings on how well you did based on those areas, as well as, you know, of course, the content of your responses. So that's just the interviewing category. It's an example of all of the great resources that we have in these other categories too. So like I said, when you're looking to get started on any of these basic career topics, this is the first place to come. So that's a quick overview of Handshake. There's even more to it than what I shared, but hopefully this entices you enough to get on there and get started. I think that's step one when it comes to your career development, is to create an account on Handshake, explore, and get familiar with that. So there's some other platforms that I want to show you as well, but I'll stop sharing for a minute and pause if anyone has questions. Or yeah, Patrick.
Yeah, I just wanted to tell everyone, at the beginning, I was telling them that, when they're coming in, out of 100% of their mindset right now, right, 90% is, okay, the curriculum and the classes, and I have to do well. And unfortunately, what I've experienced is students, and I mean, there's so many times in a day as well, they don't spend enough time focusing on all of the other aspect of what's available. And to be fair, when they're coming in, we're telling them about the classes and the scheduling and the registration. We don't tell them, stop. Before you do anything else, register on Handshake. Start your network. We tell them, go, get the grades. And unfortunately, they miss out. There's a lot of, I mean, you could see, there's a lot of information in there. And even though it's for the undergraduates, you do start developing network. And even though the job might not be for you, you may meet someone in those areas that could help you get that job. And more often than not, students wait until towards the end, then they start registering, and then they start applying, and then they graduate, and then it's too late. Then they get a job, and then they grab it, and they realize, that's not for me. So you really, I mean, you don't have to start 24 hours a day. You could start 30 minutes, register, as Catherine mentioned, and then you look into it, and you go for maybe like this event. So you build it up slowly. So by the time you're done in 2 years or 1 year, you're well on your way to know who's hiring, who's not, and what's available and what's not. It's not an easy job, I will tell you. It's a different kind of skill set altogether.
Absolutely, Patrick. I think that's a great point. I think, I'm biased, of course, but at the most basic level, you come to college, you pursue a graduate degree to better prepare yourself for your future career. That's the end goal here. And while academics and all of the, other pieces are so important, definitely prioritizing career development is what's going to help you get there. And one other, kind of just a quick, interesting point that I'll sometimes make is that the first thing that people will ask you after what is your name is, what do you do? So your job, your career is such an important part of who you are, what your identity is. And so I want you guys to, be starting on the process early so that you can find something, like Patrick was saying, that you really like and that you enjoy and that allows you to use your skill set and your strengths. And, it's difficult to do that if you wait until the last minute. You want to be proactive so that you can really lean into the process and enjoy it and take your time and take all the right steps. All right. Any other questions about Handshake from the group? Yeah.
Yeah, I have 2 questions related to Handshake because I've been utilizing the platform already. One thing I found with the first thing is that the school year, because I'm a master's student, so most of the jobs posted on Handshake, they require like somebody maybe graduating in 2022, which I am, but they set the profile to be like junior or sophomore or things like that. So like master's students doesn't like just automatically don't qualify for the job posting. That's one thing. And I don't know if your recommendations for getting around that, or how do I apply for such jobs? And the second thing is that the US work authorization. I'm an international student, and I realized that I can use my CPT while I'm still in school, if I understand correctly. But the CPT starts in 1 year. So if I apply for a summer internship, like I then, does that mean that I have US work authorization, or just could you expand on that? Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Yaron, am I saying your name correctly?
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you for those questions. Those are great. So in Handshake, when you're searching, there is a school year filter like Yaron mentioned, but you don't necessarily have to select that. You can search and filter by all different kinds of criteria. And all of the postings that come from employers are not only for current Lehigh undergrad students, but they're also for recent alum and for graduate students, and the employers are aware that it's reaching a broader audience. So yes, it's true, you're not gonna find a position on here that's for maybe like a mid-career or executive level professional, but it's not just for undergrad students, it's also for people who are at that master's level and who are, a couple years beyond. But with that being said, Handshake is just one job board of many. I always encourage students to be using various strategies when you're career searching. You don't just want to apply one place or network one way. You want to be hitting it from multiple angles. So yes, you want to look on Handshake for opportunities, but maybe depending on what you're looking for, that might not be the best job board, and you'd be better off, focusing on, say, Indeed or ZipRecruiter, or going directly to company websites. So this isn't your only option, but I do feel that there's a lot of valuable postings on here for you all as master's students that would be appropriate for your level of education. It might just require a little bit of extra searching. So that would be my answer to your first question, Yaram. And then your second question was related to CPT and OPT. I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought. Could you repeat that?
Handshake, they require like US work authorization. Mm-hmm. So I'm an international student. I'm just incoming class of the program. So I would qualify for a CPT after 1 year of coursework, if I understand correctly. Is that true? Like, does that mean that I have US work authorization after 1 year?
Yes, so I think that what you're asking, Yaron, might be related to the questions that come up in the application process that ask, are you authorized to work in the US? Will you require sponsorship now in the future, right? Okay. For the first piece of that, are you authorized to work in the US? You should select yes, as long as you are eligible for CPT. You want to check first with OISS. I don't know all of the ins and outs of that. I'm, not an immigration expert, but if you are eligible for CPT, for OPT, for STEM extension OPT, then yes, you are authorized to work in the US. You should respond yes to that question. But then for the second one that asks, will you require sponsorship now or in the future? You should select yes for that as well, because you will require sponsorship. Even if you're just applying for an internship, they still want to know whether, you're international and will need an H-1B sponsorship later on, because a lot of times internships are viewed as a pipeline that could then lead to full-time, and, that's context that they need to know. And actually, I would like to also point out that in the career resource library that I showed, where we have the interviewing resources, resume resources, all of those, We also have an international student category that has a document about how to disclose your international student status that talks you through how to answer those application questions, how to describe it in an interview. And there's all other kinds of resources there too, specific to international students. So I would go there and check some of that out too.
Okay,
I would
thank you.
say, Aaron, I would say one thing, and not to contradict Catherine, but yes, if they ask, well, it depends how the question is asked. If it's an application, it depends how it's worded, right? But technically speaking, you don't need to be sponsored right off the bat, right?
I see. I
So
have like 3 years of
yeah, so
non-sponsorship.
it depends how they phrase the question, right? Are you allowed to work in the U.S.? Yes. Do we have to sponsor you right up? No, you don't, because you know I've got this amount of time, and frankly, what we've noticed with the previous experience with the students is that they're coming in. I mean, who stays 3 years out of the gate? Very rarely. So they may not even need to sponsor you at the end of the day. You come in, you like it, you quit, you get another job, and they sponsor you, or you come in and you apply for the lottery, and you get it anyway. So it's not such a cut and dry situation with the sponsorship question. Of course, yes. I mean, if you're going to work there for 10 years, eventually you will need to be sponsored. So just be careful how you answer it. And as Catherine mentioned, you know, do talk to the Office of International Students, because you know, because if you say I need sponsorship, oh, you know, that's too complicated. Let's move on to the next applicant, and you may not need it. Right, Matsala?
Okay, understood.
Yeah.
I think I can answer Iran's questions about the work authorization. So work authorization doesn't mean that you need to be like a green card holder or a citizen. As long as once you get the offer letter, you can just talk to the international student office, and they will send you to an office to get your social security number, because that's what they're looking for, because you're going to pay tax if you're getting like an internship and stuff like that. And it's pretty simple and shouldn't be a problem at all, because
Okay.
I already have my social
Yeah, I already have a social security number, so
then you're
I don't know
probably
if that
authorized.
means that. Okay, cool. Great to know.
Very helpful. And, you know, I think another just final point on that is that it's a case-by-case situation too. So if you're ever unsure, it's always a good idea to schedule an appointment with your career coach to talk to OISS, and they could direct you on, you know, what would be the best way to answer based on your individual circumstances and how the question is phrased too, because that definitely does matter. All right.
Great. All right, Catherine, thank you very much. Can you share with them your contact, or at least your email, because they're all engineering students, at least a third of them.
Absolutely.
So in case they have questions.
Yeah, I'm happy to do that. And actually, if we have another 5 minutes, I would love to show just very quickly some other tools too. I know it seems, how could there possibly be any more? That was so great, but there is. So just really quickly, and then at the end, I'd be happy to share my email with you. Would love to connect with everybody later on. So we also, in addition to Handshake, we have another platform called Lehigh Connects. That's an alumni mentorship platform. So on here, we have about 3,000 Lehigh alums who've all agreed to give career guidance and mentorship to current students. So again, like with Handshake, you'll just use your single sign-on, Lehigh username, password. Then you'll go over to this Browse the Network tab, where it will pull up all of the alums who are on the platform, and you can search and filter up here depending on who you're interested in talking to. So you can type in a specific company name. So say you're looking to work at a specific company, you can search here, identify alums that work there, and then reach out to them. And then there's also these various filters that you can use to narrow down even further. Since we were talking about international students before, I'll point out that there's a help topic in here that's specific to international students that will allow you to find alums of Lehigh who were international students themselves. And then you can reach out to these people directly through the platform. You can send them a message, you can set up a phone call. And sometimes it's even just interesting and helpful in itself to browse through people's profiles, get ideas of what they do. It could be a great source of information. So that's another tool that I wanted to point out. And then a third to wrap up is Interstride. So Interstride is a platform that is specifically designed for international students. So there's a lot of great tools on here. I won't go into too much detail, but just basically to start, there are visa insights on here that allow you to search by industry and by company to see the top places that have the strongest track records of hiring international students in the past. So using this will allow you to be much more strategic in your search rather than wasting your time on maybe companies that aren't very open to hiring international students, haven't done it a lot in the past. Using this tool here could allow you to target those that you might have a better chance with and use your time more strategically. There's also a job board on here that will allow you to search not only positions in the US from those companies that are usually open to hiring international students, but you can also search for jobs internationally. So this might be interesting not only for those who are international students, but for maybe domestic students as well who would like to work abroad. There's various resources in Interstride, again, specific to international students or for those who are thinking of working internationally. There's a country insights category that gives you career and immigration related information on all of these different countries. So, very helpful for when you're conducting a search abroad. There's webinars that come up and all other kinds of tools here. So just wanted to very quickly introduce you to Lehigh Connects and Interstride too. Those are offer some other really great tools that could be helpful in your career search. And, Rich would be happy to walk you through these in more detail if you schedule an appointment with him through Handshake. And then also we do have what's called Career Lab drop-in hours. So Monday through Friday from 10 to 3. You can drop by a Zoom meeting virtually anytime during those hours. You could just ask a quick question for 2 minutes. You can stay on for a half hour, an hour and work, and you can talk to a member of the career team. So you can find the Zoom link to access Virtual Career Lab under the Events tab on Handshake. And if you have any questions or concerns about that, I'll put my contact information in the chat, and please feel free to reach out about any other questions related to what we talked about, or just in general, if you want to introduce yourself, would love to get to know you all. So there's my email in the chat now. Any questions or comments that I could address while I'm here with you?
Okay. Well, they could reach out separately because I know that's lots of information for them to grant. So, Catherine, thank you very much for your help on that. So we're going to change gear completely. I want to introduce to you Professor, it's changing on me, Luis Zuluaga. Professor Zuluaga is also a director of the program. He's in the engineering department, and you may have him this year in one of your optimization course. And he's here really to kind of expand your mind a little bit, because he's doing some interesting research on quantum computing. And I asked him to come in and tell him a little bit about what's going on there. Maybe if he wants to as well, tell you, because you heard about Richard Kish yesterday, but you didn't hear about the engineering side as to what to expect in terms of your coursework or classwork. So I'll leave it totally up to Dr. Zuraga.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Patrick, for the presentation, and welcome everywhere to this new year. So Patrick asked me to talk a little bit about quantum computing. It's a topic that we have started to work as a research topic just less than 2 years ago. And I have prepared, a short presentation for that. I'm gonna share with you. Okay, have you guys seen my presentation? Yes?
Yes, yeah, we see.
Okay, okay. So again, the plan is to tell you a little bit what is quantum computing. I imagine that many of you have heard something about it, maybe already know what I'm saying. Why this quantum computing might be important to you and as master in finances, in financial engineering students, and a little bit of what are we doing with quantum computing at Lehigh. Okay, Patrick already presented me. So my name is Luis Zuluaga. I serve as the co-director for the MSFE program from the side of Industrial and Systems Engineering. If you have questions about the core courses that are given by the ISC department, definitely contact me. So those two courses are optimization models, optimization models and applications, which I will be teaching this fall if you are taking it, and financial engineering, which I will be teaching in the spring too. Okay, but today I want to talk a little bit about this quantum computing. So what is quantum computing? And you can interrupt me at any time if you have questions. Let's get a very basic idea of it. So where did I start it? There is this very famous physicist, Richard Feynman, who, is credited for kind of putting out the problem of creating a quantum computer. So he has this quote in 1982 saying, nature itself is too complex, right? It's too complex for us to be able to model it with classical computers. He thought, so at that moment, this new theory of physics called quantum mechanics was very successful. And he thought that, classical computers wouldn't be able to create the simulations, the models that will be needed for the physical systems that behave using quantum mechanics, okay? So, this is a lot from the point of physics. From a more practical point of view, the reason why we want to have quantum computers is because no matter how big is your computer, no matter how powerful you imagine it, there are still problems that are impossible to solve, okay? Impossible to solve. And we're gonna talk a little bit about it. But, Feynman is created with the idea of, can we do a quantum computer, okay? So what is the idea, what is the idea of quantum computers? So the idea of quantum computers is to use a very particular effect of subatomic particles, like electrons, protons, photons, right? These are not properties that you see in rocks. These are not properties that you see in coins. These are not properties that you see in big things. These are only properties that appear in subatomic particles. And you might have heard of it. there is this property, for example, that light, can sometimes behave as a particle and sometimes behave as a wave, right? For many, many, many years, there was a discussion on, whether light was, a bunch of particles or it was a wave, like a water wave or a sound wave. Turns out that is somehow both, okay? And you see, I'm not gonna go into details, but so the picture in the middle is trying to kind of abstract this idea that, light is both a wave and a particle. And the picture in the right is basically telling that light will behave. I mean, if you don't try to measure the light, you don't know if it's a wave or a particle. It's behaving as a combination of wave and particle. But if you do an experiment to measure the light, depending on how you do the experiment, you will see that the light behaves as a particle. You see, so in the left, in that right black plot, you see that the light is going like in a straight line, like if it were particles, okay? In the right, you see something to create a pattern of superposition of light, right? So, you see that the bar in those black pictures is different. So that means that the measurement that I'm making in the light is different. So depending on how I measure, I can conclude that the light is a particle or the light is a wave. If I don't experiment on the light, I don't know. The light is a combination of both, right? So this is a characteristic of subatomic particles that is still today a matter of debate, of huge debate. But that's the rocket science. The rocket science is that these subatomic particles have that property of kind of being in more than one state at the same time. And that's the property of quantum computers the property that quantum computers are going to use. In more simple terms, okay, I would say, this is the typical example that is given is, if you take a coin, right? I mean, if you throw a coin, the coin is always, heads or is always tails, right? It has those two definitive states. There are no other state, right? So large particles behave like that. But quantum particles, they combine states. So a quantum particle is like a coin, that is rotating, right? So you flip a coin over a table, right? You don't know if it's heads and tails because it's rotating. Now, the moment that you put your hand over it and lift your hand, it's gonna be either head or tails, right? So that's exactly the behavior of subatomic particles. And quantum computers take advantage of that. Somehow that is very helpful to do computations. Why? So the property that I mentioned is used to construct what are called quantum bits. So you should know what is a bit. So a bit is, is the smallest piece of the computer that either so it's like in a classical bit is like in the left. So a bit is a piece of memory that either saves a 1 or a 0, but never both, right? So in a bit, I can save either a 1 or a 0, but not both, okay? So that's a classical bit. I can use a bit to save a 1 or to save a 0. Quantum bits behave differently, okay? So they are in a superposition state, right? So a quantum bit is not 0, not 1. If I'm not observing the quantum bit, it's like in this superposition of 0 or 1, right? When I measure it, I might get 0 or I might get 1, okay? That's the big difference between a bit, where the bit is always with one state, and that state is either 1 or 0, and a quantum bit whose state is a superposition, a combination of 0 and 1. Only when I measure it, when I try to measure it, I might get 0 or 1. Okay. Any questions so far? Okay. Okay. So, I mean, these qubits that I show you, now they exist, physically exist. So there are chips of computers that are done using this qubit technology. So some of the big players in quantum computer are D-Wave, which is a Canadian company. So that's a D-Wave machine in the left. They cost, you can actually, from that, I guess that's the only company from which you can actually buy a quantum computer if you want it. It's 10 million. So you have to start saving. But many companies are developing quantum computers. Google in the middle, IBM in the right, Rigetti, Amazon. So all these companies are building quantum computers. By the way, I have to say that these machines look very complicated. I can tell you that the chip itself, so I guess, let's say where the Google guy is set. So the chip is at the very, very bottom of that column. So the chip itself is something very small. All that stuff there is because the qubits, the chip actually has to be almost at 0 Kelvin temperature to work. So all those things are too cool, right? So most of what you see in that machine is because those chips, which are very small, have to be at very, very low temperatures. Okay. Not only are quantum computers out there, so these machines are small compared to classical computers. So, the Google machine, I think it has, I think they just managed to do 64 qubits, and IBM is somewhere in 50 qubits. So you cannot compare that with the number of bits that classical computers have these days. But we'll see that even this small number of qubits can be very, very, very powerful in a second. So of course, now there is a slew of companies that are working with quantum technology. So in the left, you see the providers of quantum computers. So IBM, Rigetti, D-Wave, Xanadu, I think is software, Microsoft, Google, they are all building their quantum computers. And all these companies that are in the right, they provide related services, okay? Connections to these quantum computers, software for these quantum computers, and so on, okay? So this is an area that is thrilling. Governments are putting millions and millions and millions of dollars. So countries like China, Canada, UK, US, they are putting millions and millions and millions of dollars in trying to develop these technologies. Okay, so I hope you get kind of an idea of what is a quantum computer. Now, why would I care, right? You know, I already have a good computer. Why would I care? And especially you guys, you know, working in finance, why would you care? So again, remember, this is the key thing, you know, the key thing, the advantage of the quantum computer is that it has these things called qubits. While a bit can only be in the left, either at a state 0 or a state 1, the qubit in the right can be in this combination of 0 and 1, right? It's like a superposition. You could say this is not completely right, but you could say that in the right, the qubit is with certain probability in 0 and with certain probability in 1, right? So the superposition could be such that there is a 50% chance that if I measure it is 0 and a 50% chance that if I measure it is 1. Why this is important, okay? Why this is important? Well, it's because computers that are built with qubits will have exponentially more power than computers built with bits. And let me try to illustrate that, okay? So if I have here in the left, a classical computer with one bit, I can only save one state, 0 or 1, but I can only save one state. So one bit, one classical bit allows me to save one state, 0, okay? It's the only thing that I can represent, or 0 or 1. Now, if I have a qubit, okay, I can have two different states. I can have 0 and 1 saved in the same bit, right? So it's like in a normal bit, you cannot save 0 and save 1 at the same time. No, so if you have, if it was 0 and you try to save the 1, then it converts into 1, right? And the 0 is lost. But one qubit keeps 0 and 1 together. No, that doesn't look like much. Now, suppose that you have 3, in the left again, you have 3 classical bits. So with 3 classical bits, you can represent a state with 3 0 1s, right? And if you know a little bit of binary, you know that this 0 1 1 is actually 3. So you can represent a 3. So this is number 3. So you can represent the state number 3. And that's it. You cannot represent the state 0. You cannot represent the state 1. You cannot represent the state 2 at the same time. You can only represent one of those states. In this case, we choose 3. Now, if I have 3 qubits, because each one of them could be at 1 or 0, right? I get all the states, right, that I can form with 3 bits. So in a sense, in these 3 qubits, instead of just being able to save 0, 1, 1, I can save a superposition of all these states. 0, 1, 2. Oh, sorry, am I doing well my binary? You can save these 8 states instead of just one state, right? So here's 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, right? So this is a comparison with 3 classical bits and 3 qubits. So in 3 bits, I can save one state, and in 3 qubits, I can save 8 states of size 3. So the amount of information that I can save in a quantum computer grows like 2 to the power of n. In a classical computer, it just grows like n. For example, if you have a computer that had 8 gigabytes of memory, that means that that computer has 2 to the power of 33 bits. You can try to compute what is that number. That number is huge. Your computer has a lot of bits, right? Now, in a quantum computer, to get 8 gigabytes, you will only need 33 qubits. It's a shame that I didn't put how much is 2 to the 33, but it's a 1 followed by many, many zeros, okay? So you see the savings here, right? So with 33 qubits, I can save what it will take me, millions of bits to save in a classical computer. Okay? So this is the basic fact, okay? Now, taking advantage of this is technologically extremely difficult, okay? So in theory, this is very nice, but technologically and algorithmically, it's not easy to take advantage of this. Now, you might say, oh, I mean, why do I want to get involved with these quantum computers, these qubits? It seems that computers get more powerful every day, right? So there is this famous Moore's law that basically predicts how very well, extremely well. So someone in the 70s, Moore's predicted how fast classical computing power will evolve. And it's true. We have been evolving the power of, the capacity of classical computers has been evolved on this line, okay? Now, can this line keep growing and growing and growing? Maybe not. Maybe maybe we cannot progress more. Why? I don't know. I mean, somewhere along this line, I don't show it, but somewhere along this line, computers changed from using those transistors to using silicon, right? So at some point, this line couldn't advance, but there was a big change in technology from using transistors in a computer to using silicon chips. And that change in technology allowed this line to continue. The problem is that in the right, you see how small the components of the chips are getting. So at some point, it's gonna be, well, I don't know, it's open, right? There could be technological breakthroughs. But it seems that, at some point I cannot make just things smaller to keep growing in this line. So some people are saying, there is basically a limit on what I can do with classical computers. When will we reach that limit? It's not clear, but there might be a limit there. Even if you don't believe on that limit, even if you think classical computing will keep moving, in this line following Moore's law forever, even if that's the case, you should consider that there are problems that are simply too difficult for classical computers. So there is a very simple problem that hopefully all of us did in high school at some point. And is, if we're given a number, so like in the right, we're given a number, we need to decompose that number into prime factors, right? So this is an exercise that you do in high school. Well, it turns out that telling a computer how to do this calculation in the right, okay, is not easy. There is not a good algorithm to do that, okay? So in the plot in the left, I'm showing you how long it takes a classical computer to factor a number, right? So in the horizon is how many bits the number is, so how big the number is, and in the vertical is how long it takes. So the white line are computers today, right? and actually this is probably not your laptop, this is probably one of those huge computers that compete. I think, if I'm not mistaken, the fastest computer right now is actually in China. There might be one coming online in the US that will beat it, but the countries compete on this. So you see that if I want to factor larger and larger numbers, it could take billions of years. Now, there is this dotted line that says, oh, but we're gonna progress. Even if we progress at more slow, in 30 years, the situation will not be much better. We'll not be able to factorize numbers much faster. So the hope, and this green line of what quantum computer will do is a hope, right? It's an expectation. It hasn't been, achieved completely, is that we will be able to do this much faster, okay? So this problem for which no matter, so this is an example of a problem, the prime factorization of a number. Classical computers just die with it. So we need more powerful computers to do it. And a quantum computer, at least in theory, will do that, will do what this plot in the left shows. Now, you might say, why? I mean, I don't care about decomposing a number in primes, right? I haven't done that since I was in high school. Why do you bring such a silly problem here? Well, it is not. It is not, okay? Actually, the composition, of prime numbers is key for encryption, okay? So one of the most common, most common ways to encrypt things is using prime decomposition. Why? Because it's difficult, right? So if someone if someone wanted to guess, if someone wanted to get your key, we'll have to solve a problem that today with a normal computer could take hundreds of years. So that's why the thing is encrypted, because no one can decrypt it. Or you can decrypt it, but it will take hundreds of years or tens of years, okay? Now, but, maybe the most, so this RSA is kind of the most common encryption system that use the composition of prime numbers. But, more advanced encryption tools work that way, okay? In a sense, this has created kind of something similar to a space race, because people saying that countries are racing, because if there is a country who managed to get that green line first than the others, then that country could decrypt everything from the other country. So there is actually kind of a scientific race, so much of the race on developing quantum computers is based on the fact that if someone gains supremacy on this, it could gain advantage in encryption. Okay?
And Luis, it also could impact your, I know the students are going to be taking optimization classes and machine learning. It's also going to impact that as well. So
yes, so I'll mention that.
Okay.
I'm almost done. Yes. Yes. So, of course, this encryption is important in finance, right? For cybersecurity, blockchains, cryptocurrency, okay? But that's not the only problem for which, say, financial companies might want expertise in quantum computers. In finance, you have to solve many other problems that are humongous, right? And that sometimes classical computers are unable to do it in a reasonable time. So for example, simulation. So very likely in one of your classes, some of the things that you're gonna do is simulate the market, right? And when you have many instruments on the market and when you have many days on the market and many things, you will see that those simulations start to take time and time and time. If you want to do forecasting and you want to do very robust forecasting with huge amounts of data, that takes time with a classical computer. So that's a need. That also means that we want and we need computers that are much faster. In fact, if you go and ask IBM, Google, Amazon, who is paying them to develop these quantum computers, well, I wouldn't say that they are covering all the cost, but they recoup some of the costs mostly for financial companies. So I can assure you that any serious financial company these days has some stake on quantum computers because of these reasons on these slides. So that means that this is a topic that you should guys know. Of course, in our courses, we will learn, about, the problems that are, there are courses in the program where you will have to have the chance to learn about blockchain, and there are courses where you will have the chance to learn about forecasting, machine learning, decision-making problems. Okay, so you will learn about these problems. So I'll finish with two more slides. So one is, if you want to learn more about, why quantum computing impacts finance, there is this very nice review paper. This is something that anyone can read, right? So it is an academic paper, but it's completely readable. You can read and it will tell you basically this story that is in this slide with more detail. Okay, why all these problems are important and why for all these problems it's important to have quantum computers. I have one more slide. So what are we doing with quantum computing at Lehigh? So very briefly, I said that, 1 year ago, we formed this quantum computer and optimization laboratory with a few professors. We have like 4 professors at Lehigh, 4 professors that are in other institutions. We have like 7 PhD students, and we were funded by a DARPA grant. And, we don't work with hardware at all. So all those nice pictures that I show you, we have no idea. We will never touch a quantum circuit. What we do is mainly 2 things. We try to come up with new algorithms for quantum computers. So the algorithms for classical computers don't work on quantum computers. It's like a different, not even language, it's a different computing paradigm. So you have to start from scratch your algorithms. And also more efficient ways to use them. The quantum computers that we have right now are very small. What are the larger problems that we can solve on those small devices? So those are the things. And with that, I finish, and I went a little bit over time, but
thank you. That's what I was, Luis. Thank you very much for this. So obviously, if you're going to be, you better hurry up to get your degree, because once quantum computing comes around, you got to run everything from scratch all over again, because it's going to be so fast. It's going to impact everything. Obviously, any question, please feel free to contact, Dr. Zuluaga, pertaining to this, but also pertaining to any engineering type of question. And for the, thank you very much. I am waiting for Tim.
Yeah, I'm here.
Oh, sorry, right there. So I wanted to introduce you to a Lehigh graduate, not from this program, but nonetheless, I thought that it made sense for us to talk. And the reason we're talking, I have to thank Brian for that, because he brought to my attention the firm where Tim actually works. So it's Tim is a trading engineer at a large firm, a large trading firm in Chicago. And I thought it would make sense for him to maybe tell us a little bit how he got from Lehigh to Chicago, and maybe share with you his best practices and some of the things that he learned.
Sure.
Tim?
Thank you for the introduction, and yeah, thanks for the opportunity to speak with the class. As Professor Zorro said, I graduated from Lehigh in a different program, so I was a CSB graduate in the class of 2016, and I think my path has been pretty unique in that I'm probably one of the only Lehigh grads working front office at a high frequency trading firm, which is just due to the fact that it is a very small, somewhat exclusive industry. But the reason I think I'm talking to you now is to tell you about my path, and also to prove that you don't have to necessarily be coming from MIT or something of that nature to work in the industry. So just a little bit about my background at Lehigh. So I studied CSB, and I wouldn't say I was necessarily like a 4.0 student. I was just a very average student in CSB, but I always had an interest in the financial aspect of it. So trading and financial markets was something that I really wanted to do. So going into my junior year, which is when everybody usually gets the first big internship, there was a question of who would give me an interview and where could I see myself taking that. So does that mean I go the route of working for the big four, like the KPMGs of the world, the PwCs of the world? Do I check out a bank? Do I go try to work for Google? The truth is that I tried every single one of those things, and I interviewed with varying degrees of success. I'd say the main decision point for me came down to two firms. So one of them was actually JP Morgan as a software developer, which was like, I was very excited because that seemed like my goal the whole time, was to maybe work at a bank. But then I got a LinkedIn message from someone who didn't even have a photo on LinkedIn. It was a very strange introduction, I think. But he said, hey, I work at this firm in Chicago. We're looking for graduates who are, qualified in both the computer science, the analytical aspect, as well as business. And we trade futures on some of the largest exchanges in the world. Like, would you like to be considered for this opportunity? And when I got that, I thought, hey, this sounds a lot more exciting than JP Morgan. Like, that was just my immediate thought. And actually that summer was when the book Flash Boys came out. So that would have been the summer of 2014. So Michael Lewis's Flash Boys, which talks a lot about high frequency trading and its implications in the broader markets. And obviously dramatic, it adds a drama aspect because that's what Michael Lewis does. But that's what that's all I knew. So I went through the interview process with them, and it came down to, do I want to be a software developer on what we called a low latency development team at a small Chicago trading firm, or do I want to work at JP Morgan? And I chose that summer to begin an internship at a small Chicago trading firm. So that firm was called Transmarket Group. They're still around. It's one of the oldest shops in Chicago. It's a lot smaller, maybe not necessarily the most high tech of what we would consider today. They weren't actually doing a lot of what you would even find in the book Flash Boys or the book Dark Pools or any of the few books that have been published. But it was still a really, really interesting, I think, gateway into the industry, where I met a lot of professionals. People move around a lot in the industry, and it gave me huge insight into the problems being solved, and also how, as a software engineer, how as a problem solver, there are a lot of really cool opportunities out here in Chicago. So I guess why Chicago and why I've stayed here is that that's where the Chicago Mercantile Exchange is, which is one of the largest exchanges in the world historically for commodities. So things that literally the farmers in the Midwestern United States were bringing to market, they were using the markets there for like an economic benefit. but then also over time, they list everything, including like ES futures. So like things that actually track the broader market in the equity space. So it's still very much like a venerable, really everyone looks to CME, and every trading firm that I'm aware of probably trades CME. So that summer in 2015 went pretty well. I received a return offer, and I took it. I accepted, and I spent the first 2 years of my career, so that was 2016 to 2018, working at Transmarket Group. I started, as I said, doing low latency development, writing C++ code on their platform. But after a while, I actually transitioned to doing more Python development, and what I think the modern term would be is DevOps. So I was helping with the reliability of the systems, and also slotting in when the traders needed to solve problems that they didn't necessarily have the tools to do. After 2 years at Transmarket Group, I changed roles to where I am currently. So the switch was pretty major for me, because IMC Financial Markets, which is where I work now, is one of the largest, I would say, more prestigious trading firms in the world. We're based in Amsterdam, actually, but Chicago is our largest presence in terms of headcount. And then we also have presence in Asia Pacific. So for me, going from a small futures trading firm to a firm like IMC, if you go and look at Wall Street Oasis or Glassdoor or some things, it might be very hard to determine maybe what the difference between all these firms that use initials for their names actually do, and like what the differences are. But it was a big difference. And just to illustrate that for you, I would say IMC trades like order of magnitudes more volume than my previous firm. Also, they employ an order of magnitude more employees. And generally speaking, when you think of high frequency trading, when you think of what was maybe discussed in Flash Boys, that is much closer to what I do. In terms of the career change, for me, it was more of going from like a kind of generic developer role to an actual front office role. So currently, what attracted me to IMC was that I sit on the trading desk as what we call a trading systems engineer. So I do everything from reliability of our servers, which we have a lot of. Like, we're not in the cloud. We have data centers on premises co-located with the exchanges. But then I also get the opportunity to help develop strategies and ways that we can protect ourselves against our competition and create new strategies aggressively, to create new pathways into profitability. So it's like, it's the dream role for me. It's something where I thought about it, day one when I started 2 years ago. I think about it every day. Like, it's very, very unique, and the problems being solved are massive. And whenever I think back to, should I have gone to JP Morgan, for example, that really doesn't, I just don't really think it's compatible. I think you kind of get spoiled coming to a trading firm where it's a lot more lean, and the problems being solved are just happening instantaneously. Like, if we notice, I think a good example might be when the news started breaking with COVID-19. I don't think it was a secret exactly that the markets were reacting, for example, to COVID numbers. But then the question is, where is Bloomberg getting their data from? And that's a problem that I solved. And I actually led IMC into determining, could we beat this information getting to Bloomberg? And I won't tell you what the answer was, but I will say that it was a very, very interesting problem to solve. And it just goes to show that whether you're really getting into the numbers or whether you just consider yourself a creative problem solver, trading is one of the most exciting places to do it, whether or not you have a pure software background, which I think makes a master program like this so interesting. So yeah, I think that summarizes a lot of what I've done, but I am more than happy to answer either questions by Professor or anyone here in the chat. I will be very, very candid about my opinions on the industry, other industries, and I'm happy to answer whatever you have.
Yeah, Tim, I have a couple of questions with that. So you said you're on you're on the trading desk, does that mean you're trading, or are you writing the algorithms that are doing the trading, or like how exactly, or is there someone next to you that's doing the trading? Like,
Yeah.
how exactly does that work?
Yeah, that's a good question. And I think it's a point, even when I'm assuming many of you have at least looked and seen some of the job postings, a lot of titles can mean a lot of different things. So I'll go on a very short digression in that one position you often see getting listed is called algorithmic trader. It's a term that's used by a lot of different firms. And in my experience, the algorithmic traders don't actually trade at all. Usually they are developing pieces of trading strategy. And I mean, it's absolutely an exciting role, but it's not exactly, there's no movies yet aside from the Hummingbird Project that really classify like what the environment is at a high frequency trading firm. The truth is that it's not like yelling and shouting and all these sounds. It's like actually a very sterile and even boring environment. So the truth is that like you're in the driver's seat, but not the way that maybe a classic trader would be. So then what is my role? For me, so I do not trade, but there are people in my role who actually do when needed. So I will say that I have my Series 57. So like that means I'm a certified prop trader, and that test was actually very hard to pass. But that means that I'm qualified to do it for a FINRA member firm, which IMC is. But I don't actually click the button, so to speak. But that being said, at a firm like IMC, very few people are clicking the button. If you guys have the opportunity to watch any of the media that IMC has out there, you'll see the traders talk a lot about doing analysis and then also like watching the trade. And I know it can seem kind of like it's like, well, what are the traders really doing? But there are traders who just sit there and watch the algorithm trade, but then they have these dashboards filled with very complex numbers and scenarios that they can tweak on the fly. And they do spend a lot of their time doing analysis work, not of fundamentals, but of more like pure options pricing theory, especially with their knowledge of the software platform. So me personally, I don't trade. I do some trading strategy development, but in that sense, I'm also not a pure software engineer. So my involvement has been on a lot of like reliability of our systems. So more along the lines of like networking, like, oh, hey, like if we switch this line and this host on this network in this data center, like, can we get a 3 nanosecond advantage? And those are projects I'm very often involved with. But then even when it comes to the processing power of a computer, which doesn't sound sexy at all, but then you think, well, we have the option between like overclocking here or like getting this like new box that like no one really knows if it's gonna fit our needs. And then it turns out that we improved our performance by 10%, like day over day. Like sometimes that is more valuable when you can deploy it at scale than a single insight that a trader might have. So the trading systems engineer means I get exposure on both ends of it. So sometimes it is just reliability stuff like, oh, hey, Tim, like this system is down, what's going on? But then because I'm not a guy sitting in a back room responding to support tickets, I think I have the insights and obviously the autonomy and trust to kind of move forward. Like I said, the examples with news, I led that, and I can sign my name next to some P&L there, which is pretty cool.
Tim, thank you for joining us today. My question is kind of towards a bit of the technical side of this. The Quant world's filled, obviously, Python R, C++ is in there. The sheer speed of C++ really does fit into the systems of sort of high frequency market making firms like IMC. The question is more towards kind of what do we as students spend our next 2 years doing, right? We go to class, we go through the motions, et cetera, et cetera. But at the end of the day, there's a game plan when we get out. So the question is essentially, do we focus, and again, to preface this, a lot of us come from a diverse background. You have mathematicians in here, you have pure computer science, and you have your pure finance folks. Where do we focus our next 2 years, year, whatever the time is, in terms of software, in terms of coding languages and their applications? Obviously, the back end, the software side, and the algo implementation in C++. But there's a growing kind of world for backtesting in Python, and at least at the higher language levels, quant training in Python. If you could just speak to that a bit.
Yeah, that is all true. And I would, like, a couple years ago, I would never have recommended this, but I think there's even some communities online, like Reddit. Like, I would never say, like, oh, go to Wall Street Bets to see what people are doing, but there are algo trader, like independent algo trader communities out there, and you would be surprised to see how much what they do actually mirrors what our traders might do day to day. So to speak specifically, programming languages, Python is getting the job done these days, absolutely. And I would say that if you really want to work in trading, someone from this program, your two main choices are quantitative trader or just pure quant. So quantitative research analyst, whatever they call the titles. And that comes down to like how math heavy your background might be and where your interests are. So to me, a quantitative research analyst, it's a lower stress job, but maybe a higher expectation job, in that like you aren't responsible for the trade itself, the trading strategy running. You're the one doing the very, very advanced math and tuning, which is exciting. I've seen some great people come through and make an extreme impact very quickly. But then on the trader side, it's not to say that there's no quantitative aspect or no programming. I would say that you must be comfortable going through the whole life cycle yourself. And that, not to say develop a trading platform, but when you say backtesting, it all comes down to me to backtesting. Like, I don't think you can be a great trader without being a great backtester, and you cannot rely on somebody else to do it for you. So I think getting experience with Python, specifically pandas, and what they, usually what they say is like the SciPy, like the scientific packages that people are using there. It is absolutely, it's what everybody uses. I see it every day. We have developed tons of tools to support that type of activity. So Python's a really, really safe bet. Do we have some people using MATLAB and R? I would say they're more old school, and I would say Python literally can do everything. Like, even computationally, it can do everything. We don't use it to trade, obviously, but like we can use it for all of the analysis, and it really helps having people on the same page. So initially, it's whatever is going to allow you to have the shortest feedback loop possible. What allows you to have that mental flow, and you can just pursue your ideas and go through the scientific process is best. But if you need a specific recommendation, I would say Python is just the clear winner at this point.
Hi, Tim. Thank you very much. I have a quick question on just to get a lay of the land in terms of the makeup of your trading flow. So what's the core skill set competency on the floor? Like, for example, the guys that actually sit on, which would be your traders that you talk to, what areas of careers or academic training do they come from? And then just across the board, maybe your area as well, just so that I get a lay of the land of where each niche skill set actually falls in. If you could speak to that. Thank you very much.
Sure, yeah. And I think that's like really, really interesting, because trading firms can say one thing and then it's another once you actually get there and sit on the floor. So I will say, I guess I should have provided this. I'm on the FIC desk, which stands for Fixed Income, Currencies, and Commodities. So basically everything that's not in equity. So we trade everything from treasuries to gold, silver, and all the products of the earth, like energy products such as oil, natural gas, also down to agricultural products like soybeans and their complexes. Everything, pretty much everything that's traded on CME, with a few exceptions. So on this desk, when we look at new grads, I see most people coming from quantitative backgrounds. So when I look at our internship class from this summer, I would say 90-something% of them had backgrounds in comp sci, math, applied math, physics, comp eng maybe, as far as the undergrads. That being said, like, there were interns who were right out of like programs like this, usually less, but there were, and I wasn't familiar with their backgrounds. When I look at actually who's on the desk and who has more experience, I would say as you go up in the career longevity, you see a more of a mix. So I actually sit next to a guy. Well, I'm actually working remotely now, but I sit next to a guy who is a broker trader, which means he actually trades with guys in the trading pits. So I think that is more of a stereotypical idea of someone who literally was a college athlete, probably worked in the pit coming out of school, but still had some mathematical, at least mental stat ability, and then came upstairs and worked for us. When I look at more of the quantitative traders, like I said, everyone recently is coming from a quantitative background, and they all, like I said, they all do their own backtesting. Whereas the older people, it's much more of a mix. IMC is one of the most technology forward firms, so I think they're kind of biased toward people coming from engineering backgrounds, just STEM in general. But at my old firm, it was much more all over the place, where you had guys who in my internship class in 2015 were showing up not knowing how to program, and they had backgrounds that maybe had some statistics, some engineering, but didn't know Python or anything, and they were doing it. But yeah, now it's much more it's just much more quantitative. Like, when you think about it, our most successful traders are the ones who know the entire tech stack. So from our very low latency systems and hardware all the way up to like how the traders are interfacing with them. Like, that's how people like under the age of 30, they aren't even working for 10 years, become desk heads, how they become partners, how they become just these like titans of trading. It's having the full stack experience.
All right, thank you very much.
Tim, thank you very much for your time. But I think we have a great segue for our next speaker, because Tim mentioned, you could see a problem solver. And essentially, that is what you are expected to become, right? You're not necessarily expected to become good students, right? So as you know, I spoken to the hiring, not the hiring, but the enrollment process. I am more focused on your ability to get things done rather to get good grades, right? So, and I think that Tim mentioned that, and even though Tim is in a different background, he's engaging with some of you already, and I think what's happening is the market is changing. So you got the finance, you got the banks. Maybe banks may not be the way to go in the future. Maybe smaller teams, smaller projects, especially if we're going virtual, you don't need to go to New York City to work. In the past, that was a goal. I got to go to JP Morgan. That's what I did. And I worked there. But now things are different. I think, and we don't really know where it's going to land. So in your case, you want to keep your options open, and you want to be as broad as possible. To that end, let me introduce you to John Anglo-Son. I've known John for 1 year. I am still not too sure exactly what he does. All I know, he's sitting, and you can't see. I was there 2 days ago. You see him under his tent, and he's got another tent, and there's a pool, imagine, around him. And then there's grass all around. Beautiful place. Maybe, John, could you tell us a little bit your background, the way you want to present it? Because you bought and sold some stuff, and you were in banks. I think you founded a bank, and then you were in telecom, and you have an MBA. So tell us about you, and more importantly, what it is that these guys and gal, the Aaron, should do, the attitude they should have, right, to get attention to a guy like yourself. Disconnect yourself, John.
Thank
Here we
you.
go.
I'm sorry. I was like, yeah, and I'm usually telling other people you're still on mute. So,
Okay.
So I have a very eclectic background, and I'm not sure, like, necessarily I'm the ideal person to either say I want to get his attention, or, but what I was going to talk about today, which is on the agenda, which basically says, what are the skills that from you all, the people, skills that people are looking to hire, and I'm going to disappoint all of you because I'm not going to talk about any particular skills. So I'm going to give you that heads up to start off with. You're looking at a guy. I actually went to Lehigh. I got 2 degrees. I got 2 degrees, and one of them is a little peculiar because I have a pure science degree, but I got it from the engineering college, which nobody did at the time. So my undergraduate degree happens to be in chemistry. So earlier when Luis was talking about quantum computing, well, when I was going to school, what they called quantum mechanics, which is the precursor to quantum computing, was barely understood. So we did study it. I actually understand it quite well. You had a hard time doing any calculations in it. Also, let me go back because I'm so old. When I graduated from high school, actually my senior year program, the mainframe at my high school, which was a big deal to be able to do. There were 8 of us that got a chance to do that. I happened to be one of the 8. The rest of the time, you didn't even have a calculator. We used slide rules, which is kind of an old device that if you look it up in Wikipedia, you'll understand what a slide rule was, and it's really a mechanical computer. So I actually, programmed my computer, used slide rules. I go to Lehigh, and my freshman year, they actually 2 companies offered the first calculators, Texas Instruments and Hewlett Packard. And so one used one style of calculation and the other. So really the time that I was a freshman at Lehigh was a big transition in a lot of respects from all kinds of things. And so you might look at me and say, well, did you learn how to program a computer? Absolutely, that's a skill. All of the languages that I've ever learned to program computers have been obsolete for at least 25 years. So do I understand how computer logic works? Definitely. Do I know the latest, do I know the latest like C++? No, I don't. In fact, I hire people that know how to do that because it's really for what I do anymore, not a skill set that benefits me to know how to do. So you'll find over your career that skill sets and skills are mutable. So what are the real valuable things that you should be looking at? Because you're all master's candidates. So to me, it's a matter of, well, what should you do in order to be a master's candidate? So as I said, my undergraduate degree is in chemistry. I got it from the engineering college at Lehigh. I stayed for 2 more years and I picked up a master's in business administration. So I went to school for 6 years, ended up with 2 degrees, 3 areas of discipline, science, engineering, and business. And my fascination with business, and the reason I took an MBA is because I was fascinated with economics, which I've never actually technically practiced in. So what is it that I did? I actually went, from a career standpoint, and I always wanted to run things. I like running businesses. I'm very inquisitive. So, I always wanted to be able to have the abilities, the skill sets to run companies. So I do have to tell you that in all my education at Lehigh, the things that actually helped me run companies were not the skills that I obtained from Lehigh, but it's the things that I worked on and the ability to practice working on things, thinking about stuff and saying, hey, how does one go about solving a problem? Earlier, and it's kind of interesting because I could relate to you both what Tim and Professor, and I don't remember Luis's last name. He's the professor that was talking about quantum computing. But both of them are talking about 2 sides of problem solving, or they were. And see, to me, problem solving is really what you should be interested in if you're going to spend all your money getting a master's in anything. And then if you go on to get a PhD, again, you should continue to be interested in problem solving because it's the problem solvers of the world that we call innovators. And if you innovate something, you can recognize, an ability because you'll probably in the innovation process realize that understanding when other people think something's very risky and properly understanding the ability to estimate that risk is key. I mean, there's two things in my opinion that you should learn in business. One is, okay, what are the dynamics of supply and demand? That's Eco 101. And then what's risk versus rate of return, which is generally Finance 101. It is how complex those two things come together in the business world that I think you really, really want to study, and understanding the value of studying those things. So, you're all going to do eventually a capstone project. Well, back in the day, you used to actually have to write a thesis, and you may still write some theses, some thesis, but the ability of the capstone project, which is one of the things I wanted to incorporate this, is encapsulating the concept of creative problem solving. Now, I've actually worked with one group, a preliminary group to the capstone project, and and I know Professor Zorro asked me to address this, and so frequently they'll say, "Well, how do you want us to do the project?" Well, I don't really know how I want you to do the project. If I knew how I wanted you to do the project, I'd write it up and I wouldn't need a master's candidate to do it. What I know is at the end of the project, what results am I looking for? And generally, I'm looking for a comprehension and a definition of an environment where I now know the decisions that I want to make as it relates to making money and moving a business forward. And so that's the important thing to understand. In graduate school, really the only difference between getting a master's or a PhD in something and getting an undergraduate degree is, in an undergraduate degree, you're taking a bunch of courses and you have a level of competence, and you could say, well, I have a skill set that is represented by my degree. But once you get past being an undergraduate, it's no longer about coursework and skill sets and a base knowledge of anything. It's how do you apply that knowledge in a comprehensive way to solve problems. And those problems that you're solving are going to be encapsulated in the topic that you've studied, which is why you've received a graduate degree. So if you think about, like in the old days, why did you write a thesis? Because you're having all these people who are going to award you your master's or your PhD, and they're reading and saying, does this person understand not only the breadth of knowledge and the depth of knowledge, but can they apply that in a comprehensive way to solving very interesting problems that nobody's solved before? So if you're really not interested in doing that, save yourselves some money and don't bother getting a master's. But if you want to get a master's, take full advantage of all the different teamwork that you do. So in a minute, I'm going to address, like, okay, well, what do I who do I look for, and what are the characteristics that they have when I'm trying to hire people? And I've hired a lot of people in my career. So Patrick asked me to tell you a little bit about what I've done in my career. Well, I actually started out, I tried to go into the computer business. And because I happen to have a degree in chemistry, without understanding that almost every course I was taking at Lehigh at the time had some level of computing in it. I had to take Fortran as a undergraduate, both chemistry major and engineering student. And then in graduate school, I had to take a business language called COBOL. Again, both of those aren't well known anymore, and they've been supplanted by other things. But the point being is that IBM, CDC, NCR, all the big computer companies at the time didn't even want to talk to me because I happened to have a Bachelor of Science in chemistry. And they said, well, why don't you go into the chemical industry? So nobody would even actually interview me. I do believe I got one interview with CDC and one interview with IBM. And I walked into the interview, and this is kind of a funny story, which I'll digress and tell. At some point in my history, I actually was running a team of technical people who were trying to develop a whole set of products and services. And we were talking about the ability of routers at the edge of the network, and how they should be doing what they're doing and why they weren't more intelligent at the edge of the network to do the things that they should be doing. And I likened it, because they were my people, there were 15 of them at the time, frustrated with how dumb, if you will, routers were at the edge of the network. Now, by the way, this is about 2000 time frame, so it's 20 years ago. And in doing that, I kind of looked at them. I says, yeah, it reminds me of the, you know, of the computer companies when I was coming out of college that looked at what they considered, they were selling big iron. They were selling these big boxes. And I was walking in telling them how cool software was. And at the time they were giving the software away. And so here's this kid that, you know, what does he know? He's got a degree in chemistry, and he's telling us, you know, IBM, CDC, how cool software is. So as soon as I said that, everybody in the room said, well, but it's been proven that software is cool, and you're just way ahead of your time. And I started laughing, and I said, yeah, but at the time, they didn't perceive that I had a skill set conducive to what they wanted to hire. And so that's kind of why I started out my dissertation here today on skill sets and understanding what you're trying to hire. I wasn't trying to get hired into the computer industry. I thought that that would be pretty cool. I started in the chemical industry because that's where I started. I ended up very rapidly progressing. I ran several profit centers. One day I was made an offer by a very good friend of mine who was in the telecom business, which was an emerging business. It was fast moving. I was kind of getting bored watching paint dry in the chemical industry. By the way, I have all of the background anybody could have to be not only an expert in chemicals and how you make them, which is the plant side stuff, and all the economics and how you trade them and how you dominate a market. And by the way, I did actually, you know, my profit center dominated the market at the time, but I was bored. So I moved on and I got into the telecom business. And we developed, you know, 3 telecom companies and built them up, and eventually, you know, sold one of the companies to a guy by the name of Craig McCaw, who was trying to, we were competing in the long distance business. And so, you know, I had a very interesting and fun time in the telecom business. And I happened to be involved in the telecom business at the point in time where the internet, I am that old, by the way, where the internet just started coming into being. So my business partner decided, okay, well, let's get into the internet business as well, right? And so we figured out a business model. We got into the internet business. I was there early on with all that. It's interesting because, again, Luis was talking about security. Well, you know, we were having these arguments back at the beginning of the internet when they were trying to do commerce on the internet, and I was saying, hey, in an open network architecture, it's very, very difficult to secure your financial transactions. And we have this problem today. And so when he says all these countries are now involved in quantum computing so that they can look at all of the confidential encrypted information that each one of them has, he's not kidding, and that's a big deal. And not only affects, you know, the security that you're talking about, but as you develop blockchain concepts, and, you know, blockchain essentially is the platform upon which you build cryptocurrency and other financial transactions. So more and more you'll start hearing about fintech. All that is kind of based on blockchain, or what is a reasonable analog to blockchain. And so the ability to understand what those transactions are and break into them, which is what the cybersecurity piece is, and that's what quantum computing is seeking to do, is to break into that. I mean, it's more than that, but it's actually doing transactions at such a high rate. So now all of a sudden you start going, well, how do I solve my security problem? Talking about creative problem solving. How do I solve that security problem? So again, everything kind of over time and over evolution, you know, gets involved with all kinds of interesting business, technical, and everything else. So what's the commonality? And it's really, how do you go about a thinking process to understand what you should be doing, and how do you lead your group of people into anything? So why did I start out talking about capstone projects? Because I think it's a very fun thing to do and get some practice with. First of all, one of the big things in business is understanding how to marshal your resources, how to work with other people, how to, you know, kind of gain a working ability to go attack a problem, because odds are, with how complicated things are today, you're not going to do anything alone. Anytime I've started a new business or taken over a new business, one of the first things I've done is made sure I have a very, very good team around me. And I'm looking for not people that are going to tell me that I'm right. I'm going to look at people that are competent enough and have enough gumption to say, hey, John, I don't think you're right at all. Here's what I think we ought to be doing. And if I'm not a big enough person to say, hey, I'm going to listen to the people I'm paying a lot of money to, which is why I'm paying them a lot of money to, shame on me, I'm going to fail. And I don't like failure. So back to the capstone project. Well, it's practice. When I was in graduate school, we practiced on all kinds of projects and teams, and we were trying to solve problems that the professor would put in front of us that were real world problems. That's what your capstone project is. It's a real world problem. By the way, and usually the capstone projects are very ill-defined. If you find a really well-defined capstone project, you may want to run away from it because it's probably not a very good project. If the people who you're doing the project for, the company, can tell you exactly what they want, again, my recommendation is run away from it. You're really not going to find out much about it. And you're not going to practice your thinking, and you're not going to practice, getting a group of people together and saying, this is a really difficult problem. Okay, so as I said, if they know too much about it and they know exactly how they want it done, then it's not much of a challenge because they've already really done the part that's intriguing and challenging, which is the creative problem solving. I look at the capstone project as an opportunity, and I'm going to use a word, and I'm going to start talking about that in a second, but I look at it as an opportunity to innovate. So thematically, if you're looking at skill sets and you're trying to say, hey, what skill set do I want to have? Do I want to develop? Let it be the skill set of innovation and being an innovator, and do things that help you become a better and better innovator. Do things that help you become a better and better leader. What I would be doing if I were taking my master's in financial engineering is I would be seeking to build my abilities and experience on solving problems, being bold. I was, and I told this to my son too, and he used to laugh. I always decided that I would work for somebody so I could make them money, but make mistakes on their nickel rather than my own. And that's always served me well. So I've made everybody that I've ever worked for money, and I've made myself a lot of money. To the point one day where actually they did ask me, because he mentioned it. I did help found a Lehigh Valley community bank called Embassy Bank. So if you ever see Embassy Bank, go in, deposit some money. We're more than happy to take your money. In fact, that's what I was doing before this call. Is I was on the board meeting call for August, and we were talking about all kinds of interesting things as it relates to the banking community, COVID-19. Earlier, Patrick mentioned that he didn't know about what banking was going to look like, and whether banking was a good area to go into, for the future. And I think it's going to be a very, very interesting area to go into in the future. I don't know about the next, 2.5 years. I think until we get past understanding the implications of COVID-19. But I've never been so proud of a team in my life as our banks. We forecasted very nicely. We had a nice pandemic plan that we had done about 7 years ago. We had, we constantly practice things, and so that was essentially an innovative problem. I mean, having to think through a pandemic 7 years ago before we've ever really had a big one is a challenge. And so, the team thought through it. They came up with some solutions. They inventoried all the equipment that they thought they were going to need. And at the end of February, we actually dusted off the plan knowing what was going on with COVID-19. And we decided to make sure that we had inventories of everything. We were prepped. We thought that there might be a problem, and there was. And our bank was open and serviced all of the customers during this very critical period of time. And in fact, we actually helped support a government program, which is, its acronym is PPP, and I wish I could tell you because I hate acronyms. By the way, get used to acronyms, because you're in an area where if you don't know any acronyms and you can't talk acronym, you're going to be in trouble. But the financial community just loves their acronyms. But PPP, I believe. I'm not going to take a guess. I always forget. But it's the money that very many businesses were allowed to get to help sustain their businesses so that they could come back post the pandemic. And if you want to, you can Google the US government and put in PPP, and it'll tell you what that acronym stands for. So back to the bank. So banking is a very interesting area. Why? Because fintech, financial technology, is going to be everywhere. You're going to see more and more deployment of things like, and they were talking about it earlier, of a blockchain. And so all of the things you're studying right now can be looked at as being very, very exciting. You've got some interesting projects that you're doing. For those of you that are going to work on the One Capstone course, there's an economic development entity in Allentown, and the economic development entity is trying to continue to rehome manufacturing into the United States, and specifically in Allentown, which we've been very successful at over the last 25 years. And now we want to accelerate the growth and the relocation of manufacturing firms, in this region. And so that's a very exciting project. Patrick will talk with you about it, at some point, I'm sure. And we look forward to all of you that wanted to get involved with it, because it'll be very cutting edge. There hasn't been anybody doing the kind of investment work that we're talking about doing. And your capstone team at Lehigh, for at least the next and perhaps a few more capstone projects after that, will really be helping to design what'll be in place probably for at least the next 25 plus years, in this region to, rehome manufacturing here. So I think it's going to be kind of fun, and you can always look back and say, hey, I was involved with that. But again, it's an innovative solution, to an interesting problem. So on to what it says that Patrick outlined in the area that I'm supposed to be talking about, which is what are the characteristics. Hold on, I'm going to make sure that I bring it up, because sometimes now my technology, oh, there we go. Say my technology made me put my thumbprint in. So he wanted me to talk about what do we look at in terms of skills. Notice I'm big on skills, but I don't know what other word what are the skills that I look for when I'm hiring? So I don't really look for skills, I look for characteristics. So I look for, am I hiring somebody that has a depth and a breadth of knowledge? I don't really care what your depth and breadth of knowledge is. I just want to know that, you've studied something and you have an ability to really understand it from beginning to kind of end of whatever that topic is. And that you understand more than just what it is you have a degree in, how it relates to other things. Okay, so that's number one. I'm looking for depth and breadth of knowledge. I don't care what the topic is. Number two, I'm looking for your ability to think. Okay, can you think? Can you think clearly? And can you think concisely? Do you get easily confused? Or are you fairly good at ascertaining what somebody said, asking enough questions to make sure you know what they said? Can you think? Because the ability to think surpasses all kinds of things. You might have a great amount of expertise at practice, so I kind of look at, construction, which I used to be involved with. Can you bang a nail? Can you cut a piece of wood? Those are skill sets. Okay. How you think constructing a house is understanding not only those skill sets, but how do you apply them in order to accomplish something that you want, which is I want to build a house, I want shelter, I want to build a company. Do you know enough about how a company is composed to be able to participate in building a company or improving a company or taking over a failing company and fixing it and making it profitable? So your ability to think. Third thing, I call it problem definition. Can you take something that's fairly complex, that is not, clear, that is very murky, that nobody else has been able to fix? Can you digest that problem in a comprehensive and holistic way? And then if you can you clarify and define a course of action? In other words, can you recommend to somebody that if I were you, I would do this? And that's an ability that I try to ascertain, believe it or not, when I'm hiring more than just, clerks and or technicians. When I'm looking at, management potential, I'm looking at people that kind of can understand what a problem is and dissect it appropriately. And the last and most important thing I'm looking for is leadership ability. In order, in my opinion, to be a good leader, you also have to know how to be a good follower. And so when I'm looking at it, I'm saying, can this person lead a group of people? And if they're not leading, can they get out of the way and be a very supportive follower? And while you're leading and following, do you have a sensitivity to everybody around you? Is this all about you, or are you trying to make the team better? So I look at it more in terms of like say playing golf or tennis. I look at these activities like playing soccer, playing hockey, playing football, playing baseball, where it's a team activity. So I'm asking myself, and sometimes I look at people's resumes and say, do they have experience, playing a team sport? And when you have experience, I'll ask you questions about, hey, how'd you get along with everybody? Now you won't realize what I'm asking, but I'm really looking for, how'd you get along with everybody? How did you deal with adversity? How did you, did you win every time? Were you playing on a championship team? What were your goals and objectives? So those are the things that I look towards. So hopefully, Patrick, or Professor Zorro, I covered the topics that you wanted.
Yes.
And we'll throw it up in the questions for what little time we have left.
Sure.
Is that what you wanted, by the way?
No, that's exactly right. I mean, you're kind of saying a little bit what Tim said and what I said originally. I mean, I'm trying to instill, and I have to say, what you said at the end is interesting. The thing about I want to be a team player, because I know that some of you are already contacting me. I need this. Can you put me in contact with this person? Which I will do that. But keep in mind, it's not always just all about you as well. You have to understand that you need to be part. And I think that's what the projects are interesting, because it forces you to work as a team. And so, and again, this with all the networking and everything else becomes, 50% of the program at some point. In fact, I don't know if you remember, but one of the IAC members sent me an article, sent us an article about, why is it that if you're going to become a doctor, right, when you get your degree as a doctor, you get 1 year of residency before they allow you to do anything. But yet, when you're going to graduate, they're going to say, okay, you got a degree, okay, you're a quant, go ahead and work. What do you think happened to these people, right? Either A, you get killed, B, you get a job that's not really good for you, right? Only the one that have really practiced and understood and worked with others and really took full advantage get the right kind of job right away. And in fact, what I want to do soon is I want to increase the level of project that we involve with people like John, right? Where you get more and more involved with projects, more and more involved with internships. In some programs, an internship is required for graduation. That is something that at some point, for those of you that are in the 2-year program, it might become a requirement. Because, you can't just go out there with a bunch of grades and say, okay, hire me, I know what to do. That's not, especially now. And as we've seen, and John is really the exemplation, right? You learn about programming, but all these languages are gone, right? The stuff that Tim is talking to you today, and he's saying Python, when you guys, 10, 20 years from now, that's going to be gone too, especially with quantum computing coming right behind us. And it's pretty close. So
it's funny that he says that, like, so from time to time, people will bring me in to talk to people that are doing programming, and, they look at me and they see, the age, and they see the white hair, and they're figuring, what does this clown know about programming? And then I'll start asking some questions, and then they realize, oh, I actually do know a lot about programming. That doesn't mean I can program anything in any of the today languages. I mean, I could study it, but my talking with them is to help them understand objectively, how do we need to think through the problem that we're trying to solve and applying this kind of language, computer language, to solving those problems. I mean, so when Tim was talking, I mean, chuckling because I understand what he's doing. I'm not sure that you all understand what he's doing, but I understand what he's doing. And what he's doing is very, very important because he's framing in code what are the things that we're trying to test algorithmically to understand what the statistical anomalies are in the behavior of the markets. And so that, you know, that whole arms race is all about understanding the statistical anomalies and or getting another, you know, and he talked about nanosecond, which is 10 to the minus 9, by the way, seconds. I mean, that's a very small amount. But can we, because there's so much computer trading going on, can we get any kind of 10 to the minus 9 seconds advantage on our competitors? So it's about speed and understanding the accuracy of the algorithm. And that's kind of the competitive playing field there. So everything has its competitive playing field, and that's why understanding what's the creative problem solving that you're going to engage in and that you want to engage in is very important.
Guys, any questions for John?
Oh my God, really? There's nobody that I was perfectly
Yeah,
clear. I know
I do
I
have a
wasn't
question.
perfectly clear.
Hold on, John. Let them think. I mean, you know, some of them are in, some of them I think are in China. So, you know. But you're
Hi,
in
John.
the-
This is
Is that your
Iran.
end? How you doing?
Yeah. Hi, I'm good. I'm in my route moving to Bethlehem, so
Oh,
messy already.
good luck.
But anyway, yeah. I do have a question because regarding to my career choice, because I do have work experience before, so I'm in the middle of the career change. So I'm looking for a change in my career. I think sometimes I want to downplay my career experience because I want to transform my hard skills into an area that I'm interested in. So I don't know, like, what are you looking for career changers?
Yeah, see, that doesn't bother me at all.
In
In fact,
recruiting,
I absolutely like, I mean, I happen to like career changes because at least I presume that you know what you didn't like before. What were you doing before that you wanted to change? So that's like a question I would ask you.
Yeah, I'm on the product side of the investment company, like doing the product manager work. Like
Right.
I help launch a fund, just all the TA operations of the fund, and also just launching, issuing more on the investor relations as well.
Got it.
Yeah.
So I take
But
it because I happen to know you a little bit and you're very smart.
Yeah.
So I take it you're bored, right?
Thank you. Sorry?
Are you bored? Is that the problem?
Yeah, kind of. That's not my thing because I like in college I have a major in mathematics, so I want to do more of the technical work and maybe transferring to quant roles as well.
Right.
Yeah.
So see, I would never worry about that. And this is a me thing. So I'm going to, in a second, I'm going to tell you, like, you asked me about me, and then I'm going to talk about what I think other people perceive, which I think you need to consider both. So I would actually welcome that because I sit down and go, well, here's somebody that knows what she wants, and she also knows what she doesn't want because she's had experience enough to say, hey, you know, I really like to be on the product side. So I'm always going to leverage the fact that you understand something a lot of people that are more quantitative in their approach cannot understand. They don't generally understand, you know, the product side. They don't understand investor relations, sales and marketing, and what the market looks like. The reason that I think that that can be, you know, portrayed as an advantage is when, you know, I'm defining, okay, well, what do we want to develop from a technical standpoint? I'm always looking for people to comprehend what does that, you know, what does that user of whatever we're doing look like? And see, you do know that. And it's a little bit too, you know, mundane for you, but you know, but I do think that the fact that you know that is an advantage in understanding what you'd seek to do. So knowing that you really, you know, do like more quantitative, more complex stuff, understand the statistical tendencies and anomalies of things, you know, and you can look at it from a parametric, you know, as well as an an algorithmic standpoint can be a big advantage. But, you know, in fact, when you get to the point where you're a 3-year degree and you want some coaching on how to take an interview, I can do that, because the people that you're going to be across the table from are going to want to know from you, well, why don't you want to go into that?
Okay.
And so you just have to have a good answer to that question that makes sense, because it wasn't that you hated it, it's that you didn't feel challenged. And so now you're able to say, this is an area that I believe I'll be challenged for the rest of my life. I mean, when they asked me that question, you know, like, well, why didn't you want to, you know, be a research PhD chemist? I said, when I realized what they did, I really didn't want to do that anymore. I'm perfectly capable of being one, but I didn't want to do the job. You know, my skill sets, you know, kind of, and what I saw myself doing in my career transcended just being, you know, like in a lab, like dreaming up, you know, crazy stuff and begging people for money. I'd rather develop the money and do what I wanted to do, which is really what I've done my whole career.
Great.
I see.
And they liked,
Yeah.
by the way, they loved the game. I mean, they, you know, but I had thought about it in advance, knowing that, well, somebody's sooner or later going to say, well, why don't, you know, like the IBM guys, the first round, like, well, why don't you go into the chemical industry? You know, so I did, and I killed it in the chemical industry, and then I kind of backed myself into the computer business through the telecom business, and you know, and the internet business actually supplanted the computer business. You know, so today you have all this stuff up in the cloud. You know, and that's killing the computer guys. That's why they invented quantum computing.
Yeah. All right. If there are any more questions for John, we're going to let him go back to his. Thank you, John, very much for your help.
And I'll do is I'll post. You're welcome, and thanks for the question. I'll post my email address, and if any of you all want to contact me, and I'll post my email address to start off with. But you know, we can talk. I'll just simply, you know, exchange an email, and you'll see all of my, if you're interested. But if any of you, you know, that are in this course and working, you know, with Patrick, you know, want me as a resource, you can just ask Professor Zorro, or you can email me or whatever.
At
Thank
some
you
point,
very much.
I think a guy like Michael might reach out to you at some point anyway.
Okay, good deal.
Okay.
And I'm gonna be on just long enough to put in chat.
Don't worry about it. Okay, guys.
Okay.
So I'm gonna end it here unless anyone, because next week is for those taking a capstone. I'm expecting a one-pager for at least to get a feel for what you're looking to do, what you intend to do. For the capstone project. So any questions on some of the projects that you're not aware of and you would like to know?
Yeah, for the Falling Knives, are we still meeting today at 5 p.m. over Zoom?
Today, well, that was the previous. No, we're not meeting anymore. We're going to meet every Friday starting next week.
Okay.
Now, if you want to know information about the Falling Knives, I suggest you get in touch with Ramos or Kai.
Yeah, we've been texting about it. I'm in the group
so
too.
take a look at take a look at some of the videos and the stuff. I'm starting posting information on course site. So to get a feel as to what contribution you think what you want to do in this project. I mean, but I think you're also working on the other one, Inca Digital, correct?
Yeah.
So that one is probably a little more easier to manage because, you know, get on Splunk, talk to Metsela, for example, and you need to come up with a research idea, really. And then you could let Nick know, and then Nick will put you in touch with someone that could help you. So between Inca Digital and Falling Knives, you have enough here to give some of a meaty project. Okay, guys, anything else?
Yeah, Professor, I have a question really quick about the new project, the Ping Me project.
Yes.
Can you just kind of refresh on what's that about? And if we're interested, how do we start to get involved on that?
I said we have a call with them, with the founders next week at 1 o'clock. So if you want to be involved, let me know. We'll have a call with them. And I know, I mean, if you look at the website, it talks about API for financial institution in Africa. You may say, well, I don't know, what do I care? But it's, in fact, they're going to be presenting at the conference, and their topic is about, who owns the data, right? And that's their angle, because, when you go to a bank, who owns your data? Every day then you're on the internet or you're on Facebook, you're giving away your data for free. You should be paid for that technically. And the worst part is that you're paying for it on double, because then they make you watch video commercials based on the data you give them for free. So it's a great business model. But one thing that they do, specifically speaking, is that they use a lot of machine learning, right? Because they have access to the data, codes and codes and codes of data. And when they're in the process of doing is querying the information that they get from either customers or from banks to establish credit worthiness, credit scoring. Nothing to do with what jobs you have. For example, I'll give you a quick example. In China, they actually do credit scoring based on how often you recharge your iPhone. Right? If you're the kind of person that let it die every single time, you're a different type of profile than someone that's always making sure you never run out of battery. That's the type of stuff we're starting to talk about. We're not really talking about financial analysis and things of that nature. So the project, let's see, we don't have a project in mind. Let's see what it looks like. But I think it's going to be, some coding involved, I'm pretty sure. But it could be interesting. So join the program next week. I'll add you to the invitation so you could see what they have to say. And we're going to be speaking to the vendors, to the founders anyway. And they're very exciting to hear from us. For those of you that have 2 projects already and you're doing the capstone, I mean, you could get in, just to listen in and see where this takes it. I mean, you never know. But otherwise, I'll see you on Friday. So, Michael, I'll add you to it.
Okay, great. Thank you.
I also have a question about that. So for example, like I'm doing the Inca Digital and the Falling Knives, but I've been contacting Jordan about the project that him and Brian are working on. And that aligns a lot with what I was working on this summer. So is there any way I could just kind of contribute to that, but not be a part of my capstone?
I'm sorry, what did you say?
So I have 2 capstone projects I'm working on, the Inca Digital and Falling Knives, but the project that Jordan proposed, I've been talking to him a lot about it, that Brian's working on as well. And is there any way it not be a part of my capstone project, but I still can contribute to it?
No, I mean, I want to talk to these. Where is Brian is here? Yeah. I mean, the thing is, it's not a ride along. You know what I mean? Where you're coming in and they're going to say, okay, you do this. Oh, thank you. I'm part of the project. But as long as if there's enough stuff for you to do, and Brian and the other guys, founded this thing, let me know. Yeah, sure. We need some additional help. You don't have to have 1 project, 1 capstone, or 2 project, it could be 3 projects. You do a little bit of this, a little bit of everything. That's okay too. But make sure it's something relevant as opposed to, well, I'm just going to the meeting and see what's going on. I mean, because then the more people involved in a project, right, then these guys going to start to have a management issue where they have to manage 4 people to make sure, because it's, it can be quite complex because it's
Mike, let's talk. I think we got to talk to Jordan, obviously, and Randy here, but I could see on the math side some help.
Okay.
Cool.
If you do, then it's fine.
Let's talk later about that.
Yeah, sure.
All
and
right,
that's what I want to see happening. I want that communication going. I don't want to tell you what to do too much, because then it impacts their work, and then they have to relate. I don't know how often you communicate, and if it becomes difficult to communicate, then everything slows everything down. And this is a pretty pointy project. It is not an obvious one. So, okay, guys, if there's anything else, I will let you go. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Jack, you want to say
Thank you.
something?
Thank you.
Oh no, I was just.
That's all
thanks.
for today?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I mean, we're supposed to talk about the project, but
Mhm.
earlier during the discussion, Brian talked about
Yeah.
it, and so. All right. Yeah.
Professor, quick question for you.
Yeah.
If I was interested in the AEDC project,
Yeah.
who should I talk to about that?
I'll add you to the discussion on GroupMe.
Okay. Thank
This,
you.
believe it or not, I think that one has the best future potential. Not much today, but
Right.
in terms of that could be very interesting because he's actually
Okay.
he wants to do something. All right, I'll add you to it.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Have a good one.